Chapter 624. However, at this time Treasure Tower made a new announcement. Due to the unexpected number of wandering cultivators buying the limit-breaking pills, World Commerce had decided that if there were any leftovers from the 15,000 limit-breaking pills sold today within half a day, all wandering cultivators in the world would have the right to buy them. There was no limit to the number of people who could buy them, and they could buy them repeatedly until they were all sold out. Once this news was announced, the vexed wandering cultivators who wanted to vomit blood immediately became spirited and rushed outside Treasure Tower to wait. This time they wouldn't miss this opportunity. If there really were any limit-breaking pills left, they had to line up in front. Jing Yuankong looked at the crowd gathered below Treasure Tower. This proved that his previous arrangements were effective. He relaxed and walked away from the window with a smile. On the top floor of the Blue Palace, Pei Fong's expression was unsettled. There had originally been dozens of lords gathered in the hall, but now there were less than 10 left. This time he was the one who had contacted the various countries to pressure world commerce. More than 200 lords from various countries had reached an agreement not long ago, but now it had all become empty words. Previously, everyone had been optimistic that no matter how powerful world commerce was, they wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure from the various countries. It would be hard for Yin Baikong not to lower the price. However, just as they were about to pressure world commerce, Yin Baikong had suddenly made a fuss over the wandering cultivators. This caught the various lords unprepared and completely shattered everyone's hopes. Their tightly clenched fists had lost their target. If it was a normal power, everyone might have used force in this situation. No matter how reasonable you were, we would still force you to sell at a low price. What could you do? Who told you to be so incompetent? However, the world commerce led by Yin Baikong wasn't a normal power. In addition, Yin Baikong himself was a late-stage soul transformation expert. Once he forced the other party into a dead end, it would be very painful to bite. With a single order from him, the various countries would fall into chaos and not many would be able to escape. Taking 10,000 steps back, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshe were in an alliance with Yin Baikong. If they were reasonable, they would definitely fight for their own benefits and work together with everyone else to pressure Yin Baikong. This reasoning was that if you didn't lower the price when you couldn't sell it, you would obviously take the opportunity to extort money from everyone when you saw that everyone was determined to buy it. Although it was also a fallacious reason, it was still a far-fetched one. But now it wasn't that he couldn't sell it. Why should he lower the price? If you don't want to buy it, I'll sell it to someone else. It's fine as long as someone is willing to buy it. This is a very normal thing. With this reasoning, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshe didn't get angry. After all, they couldn't possibly join forces with others to deal with their own allies. If they did that, not only would Yin Baikong fall out with them, who would dare to stand with them in the future? They were afraid that the next unlucky ones in the cultivation world would be the two of them. Someone didn't just want to deal with Yin Baikong. Once the power balance was broken, the weaker side would definitely suffer. Brother Pei, since everyone has left, there's no point for us to stay. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid we won't have a share of the limit-breaking pill. I will leave now. Yunantian cupped his hands to the rest of the people and left. Pei Fong said in a low voice, "What's the rush? If you can't buy it this time, there will be a next time." Hearing this, Yunantian paused and said with his back facing them, "I guess it is not easy to collect the herbs needed to refine the limit-breaking dan. Do you think that the limit-breaking dan can be sold without limit? Therefore there is no harm in buying more in advance. We can talk about it next time." After saying this, he left. "Look." Pei Fong's fat face trembled as he pointed at the direction Yunantian left. He looked at Qi Jujuan and Ouyangda and said, "It is because everyone has the same idea that we let Yin Baikong, that old fox, get his way. If we want to blame something, we can only blame ourselves for not being united." After he finished speaking, other than the 3 late spirit-severing cultivators, the other lords also looked at each other and left. This made Pei Fong tremble with anger. Ouyang sighed and said, "Are we not going to buy it this time? Which one of you is willing? I'm afraid that if we don't buy it, Yin Baikong will be even happier. He is not willing to sell the limit-breaking dan to us. Even without the 3 of us, he can still earn his money. Buy it, we can't let that old fox's scheme succeed." Pei Fong gnashed his teeth and his face turned black. He couldn't understand why every time he tried to deal with Yin Baikong, it was easily resolved by him. Was it because he was useless, or was the other party more powerful? The side door on the left of the treasure tower was still empty 4 hours ago, but after the new notice was posted, it immediately became popular again. Disciples representing various forces came in and out. The doorstep was almost broken. 4 hours later, a notice was hung on the door. Today's 15,000 limit-breaking Dan has been sold out. Next time we'll be notified. The rogue cultivators on the street were depressed. Why didn't they see anyone buy it before? But in the blink of an eye, it was sold out. None of them knew that they had been played by Yin Baikong, and that they had been ruthlessly used. On the upper floor of the Wen clan's shop, when Lan Feng dismissed the Wen clan disciple who came to report the news and turned to look at Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing. This matter is very obvious. Fatty Pei wants to mess with Yin Baikong in one go. This is not the first time. Nongzhu shook her head and said, but Yin Baikong is indeed Yin Baikong. Fatty Pei is still lacking if he wants to spar with him. Lu Yanqing giggled and said, no matter how strong Yin Baikong is, when he meets you Nongzhu he will still be defeated. Compared to you he is still lacking. You can't say that. Nongzhu waved her hand and sighed. I know my own capabilities. I'm just a fox using the tiger's might. I'm still far from him. Yin Baikong is not afraid of me but by Changchun, so he tolerates everything. Everyone knows this, you don't have to flatter me. Limit breaking Dan, I wanted to buy some, but... When Lan Feng looked at Nongzhu and said, Nongzhu, you said you would help me get a batch of limit breaking Dan for free. You have to keep your word. There are a bunch of people in the Wen clan who are counting on me and I'm counting on you. Seriously, can you really get the limit breaking Dan from Niu Yid for free? Nongzhu rolled her eyes and said, don't worry about it. I have a good relationship with Niu Yid. Since it's a pill that can be sold in large quantities, he will definitely give it to me if I ask him for a batch. Good. When Lan Feng heaved a sigh of relief, in order to protect the Wen clan in the future, even if he had no intention of getting involved, he had to fight for it. Yes. I believe Nongzhu, it shouldn't be a problem for him to ask Niu Yid for some limit-breaking Dan. Lu Yanqing hid behind the green veil and smiled sweetly, then said seriously, I wanted to buy some for research, but Lingfang Valley's income is not wide, it can't be compared to other forces. Since there's someone who doesn't need money, I won't waste my money. Nongzhu, you can't be biased, you have to give me a batch for free too. Because she knew the background of Niu Yid and Nongzhu, there was a hint of ridicule in her words. Nongzhu glared at her fiercely. Mo Xiaojun told him about what happened in Treasure Tower, leaving Yu Qianchou stunned for a long time. Then he asked for some details. Only then did he understand that in this short period of half a day, Yin Baikong had been secretly competing with someone. It was obvious that someone was trying to stop Yin Baikong from selling the limit-breaking Dan. Looking at the situation, it seemed that the various countries had joined forces, but this was also reasonable. After coming back to his senses, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong. Perhaps anyone could think of a way, but to be able to counterattack in such a short period of time, and in such an orderly manner, defeating the opponent's plot in one fell swoop, this was not something an ordinary person could do. Well done. Yu Qianchou smacked his lips as he reminisced, looked at Mo Xiaojun who had a face full of confusion and shook his head slightly. Those who had not experienced this level could only see the surface of the good and bad business, they could not taste the turbulence behind the surface. He had the experience of being a superior in his previous life, so he could naturally see that Yin Baikong had taken a stroll on the edge of the cliff. It was very thrilling. At this time Sikongju arrived again, cupped his hands and said, Senior Niu, my master invites you. There was no need to mention how gloomy he was. Now that he had become an errand boy, he even had to run to the brothel. Actually, even he did not know the story behind today's sale of the limit-breaking Dan. Yin Baikong did not tell him, only Jing Yuankong and the disciples under him knew. Yin Baikong had his own ideas about which disciple should be in charge of which business. He would not let a disciple easily interfere with another party's business. Yu Qianchou laughed. He knew that Yin Baikong was going to fulfill his promise to pay within a day. He had to admit that in terms of doing business, Yin Baikong's reputation was better than his own, but his own reputation was not bad either. He happily arrived at the God of Wealth Peak, and upon seeing Yin Baikong he immediately cupped his hands and said, Brother Yin, I really admire you. You played your hand beautifully today. Yin Baikong was slightly startled. He did not expect this guy to be able to see through the inside story. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. The tree desires peace, but the wind does not cease. I also want to do business honestly, but some people just like to cause trouble. I have no choice but to retaliate. Let's not talk about this anymore. It would be strange if you could do business honestly. Yu Qianzhou smiled but did not say anything. Yin Baikong waved his hand and pointed at the 24 storage bags on the bluestone platform. 24 billion high-grade spirit stones have been paid as scheduled. Brother Nyo, please check. Oh my. I've made a fortune. I won't have to sneak around for money anymore. I can do other things with peace of mind. Yu Qianzhou's heart was pounding with anxiety as he put away the storage pouch on the bluestone platform with a smile. Then he looked at Yin Baikong and nodded seriously. Working with Brother Yin is really refreshing. I really did not choose the wrong partner. Huh. Isn't Brother Nyo the same? Yin Baikong's mouth was full of flattery, but in his heart he was thinking. As long as you are happy, there are some things that I have been holding back. After this busy period, it's time to think of a way for you to help me get some things from the immortal world that are beneficial to my cultivation. Chapter 625. Yu Qianzhou smiled. All right. I won't say much, you're busy so I won't disturb you. However, I believe that Yu Qianzhou will arrive at the cornucopia in a few days. I hope that Brother Yin will keep to our previous agreement. Yin Baikong nodded. Of course, Brother Nyo can rest assured. The money has already been prepared. Once Yu Qianzhou arrives, we will immediately exchange the goods. Good, you can continue with your work. Yu Qianzhou politely replied and floated down the mountain. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles as he walked up the mountain, looking around at the beautiful scenery of the world. His mood was very carefree. Standing under the pine tree, Chu Tian's eyes were filled with lofty sentiments as he murmured, "This world, sooner or later, will be mine. Whether it is when Lanfeng or by Changchun, none of them can stop me." As soon as Yu Qianzhou arrived at the backyard of the Sleeping Spring building, he summoned Yen Yu and the 100 Charms enchantress to the bungalow. Inside the room, Yu Qianzhou sat at the table and silently ate the fresh fruits on the plate. The two girls looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing why he called them over. After a while, the fruit plate was half empty. Yu Qianzhou picked up the white handkerchief on the table and wiped his hands clean. Throwing the white handkerchief to the side, he coldly stared at Yen Yu. "I hope you still remember what I said to you before. When are you planning to leave?" Yen Yu bit her lips. "Where do you think I can go after I leave? If there is a powerful force that wants to find me, where can I hide?" The 100 Charms enchantress looked at the two suspiciously, not knowing why Nyo Yid wanted Yen Yu to leave. Yu Qianzhou indifferently said, "I'll advise you one last time, are you going to leave or not?" As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. Yen Yu's chest heaved slightly as she stared fixedly at Yu Qianzhou. After a long time she finally said, "If you take me with you, I'll leave. If you don't, I won't go anywhere." Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered. Then he became determined and said in a deep voice, "Don't think that you can threaten me just because you know something about me. It's useless. I can give in to anything, but I won't give in to other people's threats. I have my own things to do, so it's impossible for me to bring you along. You better give up." These words were too hurtful to a woman's heart. The enchantress of Allure, who was also a woman, silently looked at Yen Yu. Seeing a trace of distress flash across her face, she forced a smile and said, "In that case, I won't trouble you. I'll continue to stay in the Sleeping Spring loft. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about you." Humph. Yu Qianzhou narrowed his eyes and said, "Do you want to be a brothel keeper for the rest of your life? I've already stepped into the cultivation world. Do I have a choice?" Yen Yu chuckled as if she was very happy. She said, "Cornucopia still has some rules. Once I leave it, what will happen to me? A woman with no background, good looks, but low cultivation, walking in the cultivation world will sooner or later become the plaything of God knows how many men. Senior Nyo, you're also a man, don't you think so?" Yu Qianzhou didn't answer her. He looked at the enchantress of Allure with an expressionless face and said, "And you, I advise you to return to the cultivation world of China. Don't think about looking for that Yu Qianzhou again. That guy still has a lot of problems to solve, so he can't help you at the moment. If you're willing, I'll find someone to send you back safely." "Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Since I'm already here, I'd better stay and take a look." The enchantress of Allure bowed slightly and tactfully refused Yu Qianzhou's kindness. Two women who don't know what's good for them. Yu Qianzhou suddenly stood up, leaving a cold snort, and strode out of the door. The footsteps outside the door suddenly disappeared, and then it was quiet inside and outside the room. Yan Yu suddenly raised her head and quickly ran out to the courtyard outside, but she couldn't see Niu Yud's figure anymore. She looked around in a daze and her body swayed and she almost couldn't stand. Unbeknownst to her, the Enchantress of 100 Charm had appeared behind her and gently supported her. Yan Yu looked back with a little fear and asked, "Why did he suddenly say that today? Will he never come back?" At this moment she didn't look like a shrewd boss lady at all. Men are all bad things. If he doesn't come back then he won't come back. The Enchantress of Allure looked at her again and asked, "Do you care about him a lot?" Yan Yu broke free from her hands and smiled bitterly. "Big Sister Yi, can't he see that I don't want to leave here and only want to be with him? Since he wants me to leave, why didn't he even give me some words to make me feel assured? Isn't it said that men like to say some sweet words to coax women? Why didn't he even say some perfunctory words to deceive me? Is it because I came from a brothel that he's so disdainful?" The reason why she fell in love with Niu Yud at first sight was because she saw Niu Yud accept Li Qiuxiang with her own eyes. Although Li Qiuxiang came from a brothel, he tried his best to save her, and didn't look down on brothel women in the slightest. This scene greatly moved Yan Yu, who also wanted to live a normal life as a woman. In addition, Niu Yud's unfathomable cultivation gave her a strong sense of security, and her stubborn heart muddle-headedly cheated. Once the floodgates of love opened, it couldn't be stopped. Otherwise, how could Niu Yud get into her bed so easily? Hearing this, the temptress suddenly burst into laughter. She rubbed her forehead and shook her head. "Little sister Yan, you're finished." After laughing, she grabbed Yan Yu's hand and said with a firm look in her eyes, "Trust me, this kind of man. The reason why he's not willing to give you sweet words is because he already has a place for you in his heart. He has to take responsibility for every word he says to you, so he won't easily open his mouth. But then again, if he doesn't have you in his heart, he can leave if he wants to. Why would he come back to say these heartless words to you? There's no need." "Really?" Yan Yu grabbed her hand, eager to confirm. The temptress raised her hand and tapped Yan Yu's forehead and chuckled, "You're lucky to meet a good man. Don't worry. He's cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He won't leave you alone. What's the use of his heartless words? He's just lying to himself. If he has the ability, he'll never come looking for you. You don't have to worry, just wait for him to come back." Yan Yu was slightly stunned and suddenly burst into laughter. How could she not see this at the beginning? And it was precisely because of this that she was sure to defeat him. Just now, she was just muddle-headed by Niu Yud's heartless words. It was because she cared too much about him that she panicked. Yan Yu bit her lip and murmured, "If you have the ability, don't come looking for me." The temptress looked at Yan Yu with some envy. In the primeval forest outside the cornucopia, Yu Qianzhou once again appeared at the place where the pheasant was roasted last time. The ashes on the ground were still there, but the bones that were originally thrown there had disappeared. It was estimated that they were taken away by some animals. Yu Qianzhou's face was very long. Those two women made him very unhappy, and neither of them was easy to deal with. The temptress's feelings for him were a little ambiguous, and he still had some headaches until now. He tried to avoid it as much as he could. It was a little strange that a woman with a pure body could support such a big brothel. Which normal woman would run a brothel? Yu Qianzhou was originally very suspicious, and he dared not reveal his true identity to make arrangements. After meeting the temptress, he wanted to let her take Yan Yu to the Wuxia cultivation world to hide first, and ask a reliable escort on the way, such as asking Nongzhu for help. However, these two women had steeled their hearts. "Do whatever you want, I don't care." Yu Qianzhou kicked a big tree fiercely twice to vent his displeasure. Suddenly he looked up at the tree and saw a huge head poking out of the branches and leaves, staring at him with two big cold eyes. A large brown python flicked its tongue and slid down the tree trunk at high speed. Yu Qianzhou was stunned, and he guessed that his two kicks had awakened the sleeping python in the tree. Before the python landed on the ground, it rushed over and wrapped Yu Qianzhou with its nearly 10-meter-long body. Then it curled up, trying to strangle its prey. It was not strange to see such a big python in the primitive forest. Yu Qianzhou looked up at the python's gradually opening mouth and said coldly, "Yu Qianzhou is back, star flame fire spell." A ball of green flame suddenly exploded and swallowed both the man and the python. After a while, the green flame disappeared and Yu Qianzhou was unscathed, but there was a pile of ashes on the ground. He did not even bother to look at it and began to carefully remove the human skin mask on his face. Then he removed the force that suppressed his vocal cords and changed his voice. He loosened the muscles on his face, removed the hairband that bound his hair, put away the bracelet on his wrist and took off all his clothes. He stood there completely naked and a stream of water appeared out of thin air, wrapped around him and quickly washed him. After washing up, he waved his hand and the stream of water flowed into the dense forest. He took out another set of clothes and changed into it, and his hairstyle was restored to Yu Qianzhou's style. He looked like a new person. He looked around and without hesitation he quickly flew into the air. He looked at the God of Wealth peak in the distance and in a flash he flew towards the treasure basin. Not long after he arrived outside the treasure basin and landed between the two hanging bridges. He saw many cultivators coming and going on the bridge which was hidden in the fog. Guan Zhongkai had brought him here once so he was familiar with the way. He strolled along the hanging bridge and entered. After crossing the hanging bridge he entered the cave. Yu Qianzhou walked straight into a stone room inside the cave, and saw a few people registering to receive the treasure basin entry jade archive. He was not in a hurry and stood in line behind them obediently. When it was his turn he said, "Give me an entry jade archive." Name school. The cultivator behind the table picked up a jade archive and asked as he wrote something on it. Yu Qianzhou, no school, a loose cultivator. Yu Qianzhou said plainly. As soon as he said that, the people coming and going in the cave all stopped in their tracks. Even the guards in the cave turned to look at him. The cultivator behind the table raised his head in surprise and said, "You're Yu Qianzhou?" Chapter 626. If I'm not Yu Qianzhou, then who do you think I am? Yu Qianzhou retorted, amused and annoyed at the same time. That's not what I meant. The person behind the table stood up and waved his hand. Just then a person sitting in the corner of the stone room walked over and smiled. We didn't mean anything else. We just wanted to confirm something. Yu Qianzhou glanced at him. It was the same person whom Guan Zhongkai addressed as senior uncle the last time he came here. He was here to make a fortune, not to cause trouble. Miao Yi nodded and waved his hand. A green flame dragon flew out, illuminating the entire stone room in a dazzling green light. The flame dragon circled around the table and the table was instantly reduced to ashes. After that, the green flame dragon burrowed into Yu Qianzhou's sleeve and disappeared. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle's pupils shrank. He couldn't feel any heat from the flame dragon, but it had easily burned a wooden table to ashes. What a powerful technique to control fire. The person who was sitting at the table looked at the ground speechlessly. The crowd in the passageway had gathered and blocked the entrance. Do I need to use any other methods to prove it? Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and asked. I've long heard of the star flame fire technique. Now that I've seen it for myself, it certainly lives up to its reputation. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle praised. He then turned to the cultivator holding the jade archive and said, "What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and help Mr. Yu with the jade archive." The cultivator nodded repeatedly. After he had Yu Qianzhou inject some true essence into the archive, he quickly inscribed the incantation on the jade archive. Yu Qianzhou took the jade archive and asked, "How much?" Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle glanced at the crowd outside and smiled. "Someone knew that Mr. Yu was coming and has already paid for you." Yu Qianzhou didn't stand on ceremony. He took the jade archive and left. The crowd outside quickly made way for him to pass. After he was far away, someone asked, "Is he really that butcher Yu Qianzhou?" "That's right. After offending so many people, how could he dare to come here instead of hiding? You don't understand. Now that he has Wen Lanfeng's support, there's nothing to be afraid of." As the #1 expert below the soul formation stage, he can be considered a well-known figure in the cultivation world. Guan Zhongkai's martial uncle shouted at the crowd, "Disperse, don't block the way and hinder others from entering." After the crowd dispersed, he immediately found the right direction and sent a telepathic message, informing them that Yu Qianzhou had arrived. As soon as Yu Qianzhou arrived, the people in charge of the 8 entrances had already been informed of his arrival. After exiting the cave, Yu Qianzhou once again saw the bustling cornucopia. He only took a casual glance and immediately saw a figure appear in front of him. It was Sikongju. When the people below saw Sikongju's appearance, they couldn't help but stop to watch. This was the first time Sikongju saw Yu Qianzhou. He sized him up and asked indifferently, "You're Yu Qianzhou?" He didn't have a good impression of Yu Qianzhou. Shaming his disciple Guanzhongkai was the same as slapping his face. He's Yu Qianchou? The people below were in an uproar. Yu Qianchou is here? Yu Qianchou secretly found it funny. This guy was still calling me a senior earlier, but now he's acting like an expert. He frowned and said, report your name. I don't casually talk to strangers. Xikongju's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Qianchou and said in a deep voice, World Commerce Association, Xikongju. I've heard of your name for a long time. I am indeed Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou cupped his hands and asked curiously, do you have any business with me? Senior Niu asked me to find you. I believe you should know what's going on. Xikongju said. If it wasn't for the other party carrying something important, why would he be so patient with Yu Qianchou? I understand. Yu Qianchou looked around and said in astonishment, are we going to talk here? Xikongju pointed at the God of Wealth peak and said, follow me. Yu Qianchou nodded and the two of them flew towards the God of Wealth peak. Wow. That butcher actually dared to come to Cornucopia. Someone exclaimed and the crowd immediately became lively. The news of Yu Qianchou's arrival quickly spread. On the God of Wealth peak, Yin Baikong smiled as he looked at Yu Qianchou, who was looking around, and said, I am Yin Baikong. You are the rising star of the cultivation world, Yu Qianchou? You are indeed a talent, not bad, not bad. You are one of the top 10 experts of the cultivation world, Senior Yin? Yu Qianchou steadied his head and asked in disbelief. It's just an empty title, not worth mentioning. Yin Baikong appeared to be amiable. Greetings, Senior Yin. Yu Qianchou bowed and stood up. He suddenly said to Xikongju, you should also learn more from your master. In terms of cultivation, your master is much higher than you. But look at Senior Yin, he speaks so politely. Unlike you, you act like you want to kill the moment you see him. Xikongju was stunned by his words. Then his face twitched and his eyes glared at Yin Baikong. This guy was telling on him. Before they left the mountain, Yin Baikong had specially told him to be polite to Yu Qianchou. As expected, Yin Baikong's face slightly sank and asked indifferently, Xikongju, what did you do to Yu Qianchou? Just what is going on? Even if Xikongju killed Yu Qianchou, Yin Baikong wouldn't feel bad about it. But not listening to him was something to think about. Master, I didn't do anything to him. Xikongju forcefully suppressed his anger. Yu Qianchou waved his hand and said, Senior Yin, don't misunderstand. He really didn't do anything to me. It's just that the way he spoke made me feel uncomfortable. He then bowed and said, I have also seen Senior Yin. Junior doesn't dare to disturb Senior anymore. I will take my leave now. He turned and left. Leaving just like that. Yin Baikong was startled. Originally he wanted to scold Xikongju for putting on an act for Yu Qianchou, but it seemed like there was no need to do so now. He immediately called out, Yu Qianchou, please wait. Yu Qianchou turned around and said, Senior, do you have any other instructions? Yin Baikong's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Niu Yid never contacted him? Suppressing the anxiety in his heart, he smiled and asked, Yu Qianchou, did Brother Niu Yid not tell you anything? I almost forgot, my memory isn't that good. Yu Qianchou slapped his forehead and said, Senior is asking about the 7 treasure Dan, right? Yin Baikong's heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. He breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, It's all right, it's good that you remembered. Let's settle this matter first. With a wave of his hand, 10 bulging storage pouches landed on the bluestone platform at the side. Yu Qianchou glanced at the 10 storage pouches and scratched his head. Senior, can I discuss something with you? Yin Baikong smiled and said, What's the matter? It's like this. Yu Qianchou said embarrassedly, Senior's World Commerce Chamber of Commerce is rich and powerful. A mere 7 treasure Dan definitely won't be able to enter your eyes. And this junior also wants to do some small business in Cornucopia. Why don't you let this junior sell this 7 treasures pill myself? How about it? Yin Baikong was speechless. 5,007 treasure Dan was still a small business? Kid, aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? He tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face and said, Young man, this is not right of you. You must keep your promise. You must do what you promised, you must not have any improper thoughts. Yu Qianchou laughed and said, I'm just casually saying it. If you don't want to, then forget it. Yin Baikong took out a storage pouch reluctantly and took out a pill. Immediately he saw a 7-colored pill halo lingering between his fingers. It was exactly the same as the 7 treasure dan he had seen before. Even Yin Baikong couldn't fake this kind of top-quality pill halo, so it was naturally the real deal. Yin Baikong injected his divine sense into the storage pouch and frowned. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "How many 7 treasure dan did Niu Yid give you?" Yu Qianqiu said with a guilty expression, "They should all be in the storage pouch. This kid is trying to play tricks." Yin Baikong's face sank and said, "That can't be right. There are only 4,000 here. Brother Niu clearly told me that he gave you 5,000. Where did the other 1,000 go?" Sikong Ju stared at him coldly, ready to seize the opportunity to flip out. "Oh, I almost forgot, my memory isn't that good." Yu Qianqiu took out another storage pouch from his chest and said with an awkward smile, "I was afraid that it wouldn't be safe to put all the pills in one storage pouch, so I took 1,000 and put them elsewhere." Finished speaking, he reluctantly handed the storage pouch over to Yin Baikong. Yin Baikong took the storage pouch and checked it. The remaining 1,000 pills were indeed in the pouch. He then revealed a satisfied smile and put them all away. He pointed at the 10 storage pouches on the bluestone platform and said, "Those are the 10 billion high-grade spirit stones I promised Brother Niu. Go and count them. We're done with the goods." Yu Qianqiu walked over and sat on the bluestone platform. He counted the pouches one by one and muttered, "No matter how much money there is, it's not mine. I have to give it all to Senior Niu." After confirming the amount, he put away the storage pouch and said to Yin Baikong, "Senior, next time, you can ask Senior Niu to give you the 7 treasure pills directly. It will save both you and me trouble. There's no point in letting it pass through my hands." Yin Baikong smiled slightly. He could see that this kid was making so many problems because he wasn't satisfied that he didn't get any benefits in the process. However, what he said was exactly what he wanted. If the 7 treasure pills passed through this kid's hands, he wouldn't be at ease. It would be better to trade with Niu Yid. He nodded and said, Since you said it like that, then it's settled. I'll talk to Brother Niu about this." He then turned to Sikong Ju and said, "Sikong, send Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. Remember to give him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Don't let him work hard for nothing." Sikong Ju accepted the order and brought Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, he really gave him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. After that, he didn't care about him anymore and left in a flash. This matter already had nothing to do with him. Only a ghost would care about him. Of course, it was also because of Niu Yid that he didn't beat him up. Yu Qianqiu weighed the storage pouch in his hand and chuckled. It was worth it to waste 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. He put it away and walked towards the bustling street. Chapter 627. At the exit to the street, other than a few World Chamber of Commerce disciples standing guard, there were also 4 people looking around. Normally, outsiders were not allowed to stay on this road to God of Wealth Peak. However, these 4 people were Niu Yid's subordinates and enjoyed privileges that outsiders did not have. Yu Qianqiu walked to the back of the 4 and stopped. The 4 of them also turned to look at him. They were all a little confused. This person didn't look like a disciple of the World Chamber of Commerce. So why did he come down from God of Wealth Peak? Yu Qianqiu smiled at the 4 people. "I am Yu Qianqiu. Senior Niu must have already told you." The 4 people looked at each other and no longer had any doubts. The person who knew the content of their conversation with Niu Yid was naturally Yu Qianqiu. So they bowed together and said, "Greetings, Mr. Yu." Then Tianyi cupped his fists and said, "Senior Niu told us to wait here for Mr. and to listen to Mr.'s orders." "I know. Senior Niu has told me. The 4 of you follow me." Yu Qianqiu instructed and walked into the street. The 4 people followed behind. The World Chamber of Commerce disciples guarding the road exchanged glances. One of them immediately rushed up the mountain to report. Walking along the street, one could hear people discussing Yu Qianqiu's arrival. However, there were not many people who knew Yu Qianqiu. They did not know that Yu Qianqiu was walking among them. Yu Qianqiu felt comfortable all over. He was not as conspicuous as Niu Yid. Without everyone's attention, he felt much more at ease. However, because of Tianyi and the other 3 people, there were still many people pointing at him who was walking in front of them. "Tianyi, where do you think we should stay?" Yu Qianqiu asked casually. Tianyi immediately followed and replied, "There is a residence on God of Wealth Peak that Senior Niu wants. The environment is not bad. If Mr. is willing, you can stay with us there." "That place?" Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and shook his head. "Don't stay there from today onwards. We will go to a safer place to stay. Yes. Tianyi replied. However, the four people exchanged glances. They were all confused. They did not know where cornucopia could be safer than God of Wealth Peak. Isn't that Yu Qianzhou? Someone suddenly shouted from the moving crowd. Everyone's gazes followed and stared. So he's Yu Qianzhou. The stream of people came to a standstill and discussions immediately broke out. This was bad. They were immediately caught in a traffic jam. The group of 5 had become a rare animal. Everyone wanted to see what Yu Qianzhou looked like. The path ahead was also blocked. Yu Qianzhou did not say anything else. His body emitted an azure flame that wrapped around him, and he walked forward with the flame in his hand. It was a very frightening sight. The scorching heat wave cleared the way forward, scaring the onlookers into squeezing in all directions, immediately clearing the way forward. Both sides of the street were instantly filled with curses. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be bothered to care about them. In any case, there weren't many good people here and they deserved to be burned to death. He put away the green flames and continued on his own path, letting the others curse him. If someone scolded him too impudently, he didn't mind killing 1 or 2. Who asked him to have Wen Lanfeng supporting him now? It would be a waste not to use such a big name. Amano and the other 3 looked at each other. The name of the butcher of the cultivation world was indeed well deserved. Following Yu Qianzhou, they crossed a few streets and stopped in front of a shop. When the 4 of them saw the emblem of a dark green orchid, they suddenly realized. That's right. Didn't Wen Lanfeng come to Cornucopia? Living in the Wen family's shop was definitely safer than living on the God of Wealth Peak. The shop assistant welcomed the 5 people who came in with a smile and said, You? Noticing that a group of people were looking here and pointing, he was a little puzzled, so he couldn't help but change his words. Are the 5 of you here to sell something? Yu Qianzhou glanced at the shop and found that the Wen family's shop was simply a grocery store with all kinds of things. It seemed that the Wen family didn't have any specialty, and it was difficult to make a lot of money without something special. It was probably just a contact point. He shook his head and said to the assistant, I'm Yu Qianzhou and I'm here to visit Senior Wen. Yu Qianzhou? The assistant looked outside and immediately understood. The shopkeeper of the shop came a few steps and asked, Are you Yu Qianzhou? I'm the real deal. Yu Qianzhou smiled. The shopkeeper looked serious and waved his hand saying, Come with me. Then he took them to the backyard and asked them to wait for a while. He ran upstairs to report. After a while, a head popped out of a window upstairs with a sullen face and shouted to the people below, Get up here. It was none other than Nongzhu. Have you taken the wrong medicine? Yu Qianzhou immediately retorted. He turned back to the 4 people and said, You wait here, I'll go and see what's going on. The 4 people agreed, but they were secretly amazed. They all saw the man just now. It was Mr. Nongzhu who looked for Niu Yid last time. Yu Qianzhou dared to contradict him like this. He was very powerful. Lu Yanqing heard Yu Qianzhou's words upstairs and suddenly laughed. She asked Nongzhu, Is it Yu Qianzhou? Nongzhu nodded with a sullen face. Wen Lanfeng couldn't help laughing. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, I've heard of this guy for a long time. I'd like to see what's different about him today. The 3 people all stared at the door. Unexpectedly, they heard dong-dong footsteps everywhere on the floor below. Then they heard someone scolding below, Damn it, we went to the wrong floor. The 4th floor is the top floor. This is the 3rd floor. The 3 people looked at each other. Lu Yanqing's face was blocked by the green gauze. They couldn't see any change, but they could hear unbearable laughter coming from inside. Wen Lanfeng just laughed twice and Nongzhu's face couldn't be gloomy anymore. She scolded with a somewhat twisted face, Bastard, what a shame. Dong 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 footsteps sounded outside. A head popped in and muttered while observing, Why does a shabby shop have so many rooms? It's like a maze. Don't you think? When he turned his head to the left, he found Nongzhu and the other 2 people standing inside. He swallowed his words and asked weakly, Can I come in? Wen Lanfeng smiled and said, Come in. He stared at him curiously. He wanted to see what was so special about this disciple who could attract Bai Chongqun's attention. Yu Qianzhou's face became serious. He walked to Wen Lanfeng and saluted, You must be the famous Senior Wen. No need to be so polite. Wen Lanfeng laughed and said, You are also famous. Alas, that's just a false reputation not worth mentioning. Yu Qianzhou behaved very modestly. When he saw Lu Yanqing, whose face was covered by the green gauze, he pretended not to know her. He asked knowingly, "May I know who this female senior is?" But she and Senior Wen are a perfect match. They are a perfect match. Is she Mrs. Wen? Nongzhu's expression twitched. This guy really knew how to flatter. Wen Lanfeng was probably flattered. Tilting his head to look, Wen Lanfeng was indeed staring at Yu Qianqiu with admiration. It wasn't just ordinary admiration, it was simply admiration. But Lu Yanqing did not accept his feelings. She asked with deep meaning, "You haven't even seen my face. How do you know we are a perfect match? Have you seen me somewhere?" Her voice was like the sound of a clear spring in a deep valley, like the song of an oriole. Damn. Even her voice was so beautiful. No wonder she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Then he waved his hand and said, No. It's the first time for me to see Senior Wen, let alone Mrs. Wen. But your temperament is like a dragon and a phoenix, with the charm of a zither and a harp. People with discerning eyes can tell you are husband and wife at first sight. Nongzhu stared at the beam and rolled her eyes when she heard Madame Wen. Wen Lanfeng kept looking at Lu Yanqing and then at himself. It seemed that he really found the beauty of a dragon and a phoenix and the charm of a harp and a harp. Well, don't talk nonsense anymore. Lu Yanqing said unhappily, "I'm not Mrs. Wen. I'm Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley." The eyes behind the green veil stared at Yu Qianqiu, sizing him up. She couldn't understand. Everyone said that he was refined, but how did he end up being such a bootlicker? Was this really the talented Yu Qianqiu? If Nongzhu was not present, she would even suspect that this person was an impostor of Yu Qianqiu. Ah. Yu Qianqiu had a look of astonishment as he said, "So, it's the world-renowned miracle hands of rejuvenation, divine physician Senior Lu. Sorry for the disrespect." Then he bowed to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Senior Wen, please forgive me for not knowing. I was too reckless just now. Please don't take it to heart." Lu Yanqing was completely speechless. She thought it was not a coincidence that this guy could be in a brothel. Wen Lanfeng said with a warm face, "Those who don't know are not guilty. You can't be blamed for not knowing." Yu Qianqiu immediately took advantage of the situation and said, "Since you have forgiven me, I have a request. I hope you can agree." Nongzhu glanced at him coldly and thought, Here it comes. I knew this guy would never be ingratiating for no reason. He must be hiding something. Wen Lanfeng's first impression of Yu Qianqiu was very good. It was rare to see such an attractive junior after so many years. No wonder he could enter by Changchun's eyes. There must be a reason. She immediately nodded and said, "What's the matter? As long as I can do it." "Here's the thing," Yu Qianqiu explained with a bitter smile. "Senior Wen, you know that I have offended a lot of people in the cultivation world. Now that I have come to Cornucopia, I really can't find a safe place to stay. I wonder if I can stay in your Wen family's shop? I see that you have a lot of empty rooms here." Nongzhu was suspicious. This guy had found a free bodyguard. He pretended to be Niu Yid and was like a fish in water in Cornucopia. Who dared to provoke him? Now he suddenly restored his true appearance. Was something going to happen in Cornucopia? Thinking of this, he immediately thought of Zi and Furong, who were still on the God of Wealth peak. He immediately decided to bring them here as soon as possible. It was right to follow this cunning guy. He did not know that Lu Yanqing was also suspicious. That's it. When Lanfeng was surprised and felt that the request was too simple. "It's not just me. There are also 4 of my attendants down there. Can they all stay together?" Yu Qianqiu asked. When Lanfeng laughed and said, "This is nothing. You can all live in." Chapter 628. Thank you, Senior. Yu Qianqiu showed a sincere smile, but when he looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing, he shook his head slightly, showing a look of regret, and muttered, "What a pity, what a pity." No one knew what he was talking about, but everyone understood what he meant. When Lanfeng was very emotional, he admired Bai Changchun from the bottom of his heart. How could he find such an outstanding disciple? Why didn't my Wen family have such an outstanding disciple? Otherwise, I would have taught him a good lesson. Lu Yanqing, who was in the green gauze, bit her teeth lightly. Logically speaking, she should not be too calculative with this junior, but for some inexplicable reason she felt her teeth itch. Don't play tricks here. Nongzhu sneered at Yu Qianqiu and then said to Wen Lanfeng, "Wen Lanfeng, the 2 girls I brought are living with Yin Baikong. I'm a little worried, I'd better bring them here." "All right." When Lan Feng nodded, Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, "You brought 2 girls here?" Who? Nongzhu rolled her eyes and snorted, "Who cares who they are not as important as your spring slumber loft." After that she teleported. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. It seemed that Nongzhu already knew about his relationship with Yenyu. Thinking of Furong of Shuntian Island, and Wu Lixue of the Wu family, he couldn't help but reflect. Later he sighed sadly, seeing that he couldn't do anything about the previous one. Lu Yanqing knew his background and her eyes were hiding behind the green veil to observe. When Lan Feng didn't understand what Nongzhu meant and asked in surprise, "Yu Qianzhou, what's your relationship with the spring slumber loft?" Yu Qianzhou came back to his senses and said with a bitter smile, "Something that shouldn't have happened anyway, it's all my fault," he casually said. When Lan Feng saw that he didn't want to talk about it, so she didn't ask any more. After the news of Yu Qianzhou's arrival in the cornucopia spread, all the forces were ready to make a move. To the various demigod realm lords, Yu Qianzhou's current cultivation was nothing to them. What moved them was the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. Hence they all sent people to keep an eye on him. This brat had been hiding for so long. Since he had appeared, they couldn't let him go. Although he had Wen Lanfeng's support, Wen Lanfeng couldn't always protect him, right? As long as they left the cornucopia, there would be times when they would be alone. At that time he would personally make a move and capture Yu Qianzhou would be a piece of cake and no one would know about it. As long as Wen Lanfeng did not know who captured Yu Qianzhou, he could not support Yu Qianzhou even if he wanted to. Around the Wen family's shop, the number of people secretly watching suddenly increased. After listening to Niu Yid's words, Yin Baikong, who was on the God of Wealth peak, lost interest in the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, after hearing that Amano and the other 3 were following Yu Qianzhou, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Hence he also ordered people to closely monitor Yu Qianzhou. In the Di Rong Kingdom's shop, after Bing Qingzi heard about Hu Yuntian's actions in luring the 2 of them to the sleeping spring loft, his complexion became gloomy and gloomy. Without a doubt, even though he had sworn an oath, it had still aroused the suspicion of others. Since Hu Changshou had already become suspicious, the others certainly wouldn't be any better. It was just that most of them didn't have Hu Changshou's strength, so they didn't dare to openly probe. Being stabbed in the back by one's ally made one's mood very bad. However, Bing Qingzi slightly calmed down and put this matter aside for the time being. Similar things were common in the cultivation world, so it wasn't strange at all. Just like these few times, how could he and Hu Changshou not stab Yin Baikong in the back? The latter was also the 2's ally, but when it came to interests they would still take action. The most important thing was to have the ability to deter others so that they wouldn't dare to act rashly. After the cornucopia meeting ends, immediately follow me back to the Ice Palace. This is not a place to stay for long. For the first time, Bing Qingzi's words to Yan Zhuixing carried an unquestionable tone. Yan Zhuixing was silent for a while before saying, "Master, disciples' cultivation has stagnated, becoming a bottleneck in the cultivation of demonic arts. I can only rely on the blood demon flower to lay the 7-star blood formation to absorb the power of the stars to break through quickly. It's said that the cornucopia meeting is a gathering of treasures, but why haven't I seen anyone selling the 7-star blood orchid until now?" Bing Qingzi and Man who could hear the unwillingness in his words. Sigh. This kind of thing can be encountered but not all the time. Bing Qingzi sighed slightly and said, "It turns out that the true cultivation meaning of the demonic book has always been sealed by the taboo. Those who don't cultivate the demonic book can't discover and break it. Otherwise the demonic book will self-destruct. Even I didn't know about this. If I had known that the 7-star blood orchid was the blood demon flower, I would have started collecting it long ago, and I wouldn't be in such a passive situation. At least 7 blood orchids are needed to lay the formation. It's a bit difficult to collect them all at once." Man who bowed and said, "Master, you can't be blamed for this. I think the demonic king who wrote the demonic book didn't want such a book to fall into the hands of his opponent, so he added the taboo to protect it." Then he said to Yan Zhuixing, "Junior brother, this matter can't be rushed. Although the 7-star blood orchid is rare, it's not extinct. There will be a time when it appears, so we might as well wait patiently." Yan Zhuixing nodded slightly, but he said thoughtfully, "Maybe there are many in the Chinese cultivation world." Bing Qingzi's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" There are 4 major clans in the Chinese cultivation world. Among them, the Wu clan runs the largest auction house in China. I participated once and saw someone auctioning the blood orchid with my own eyes. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and said, later on, I heard that the Wu clan auctioned the 7-star blood orchid several times consecutively. This matter is a bit strange. Why is it that only the Wu clan auctioned the blood orchid one after another? Are you suspecting that the Wu clan has the blood orchid? Bing Qingzi asked. That's not necessarily true. Yan Zhuixing shook his head and said with firm eyes, but there's one thing I'm sure of. The Wu clan definitely knows who the seller and buyer are. It's a pity that it's not convenient to go deep into China's hinterland to make a move on the Wu clan. Otherwise, I'll definitely be able to find out something. Alright, there's no need to worry as long as there's a target. Bing Qingzi's eyes flickered and said, the East Holy Land is opening soon. Once Bai Changchun leaves, I can't care so much anymore. I'll make a trip to the Wu clan personally and find the blood orchid so that your demonic technique can make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Master. Man who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. A group of spirit-severing stage experts were forced by Bai Changchun to make a deadly oath, so they couldn't go to the Chinese cultivation world easily. But thinking that Master had broken the restriction to save Yan Zhuixing last time, it was meaningless to say anything more. At this moment, a disciple ran over and reported the news of Yu Qianzhou to Cornucopia. After hearing the news, Bing Qingzi and Man whose faces turned gloomy. They had always remembered the death of their second brother on Yu Qianzhou's head. Yu Qianzhou, you finally appeared. It's been a long time since we last met in China. Yan Zhuixing sneered. He still had a long way to go in cultivating the demonic book, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Yu Qianzhou. In the backyard of the dormant spring building, the Enchantress of 100 Charms stood by the small lotus pond. Her body was wrapped in a red veil and looked very enchanting. After listening to Niu Yid's words, she didn't show her face in public anymore. She just hoped that Niu Yid's words were true and waited quietly for the arrival of Yu Qianzhou. Sister Yi. Yan Yu shouted happily as soon as she entered the courtyard. She quickly walked to the side of the Enchantress of 100 Charms and said, good news, do you want to hear it? The Enchantress of 100 Charms had a trace of doubt between her eyebrows. After thinking for a while, she was shocked and thought of something. For the current her, what else could be good news? She couldn't help but ask excitedly, You mean, he's here? Yan Yu smiled and said, when I first heard the news, I was worried that you would be happy for nothing. So I sent someone to inquire and confirm it. Not long ago, the person I sent saw Yu Qianzhou using the star flame fire technique on the street with his own eyes. It's really the Yu Qianzhou you've been waiting for. Really? Where's he now? The Enchantress of 100 Charms asked impatiently. Her face was full of excitement that was hard to suppress. She was a dignified palace mistress. She had sneaked into this place from the cultivation world of China. Not to mention that she was unfamiliar with the people in the place, she also had to be on guard everywhere. It could be said that she had suffered a lot and the hardships were indescribable. With great difficulty she had finally found him. How could she not be excited? Yan Yu looked at her reaction and chuckled. From her reaction, it could be seen that she wasn't looking for Yu Qianzhou just to solve some trouble as she had said. She was afraid that there was something ambiguous going on. To be honest, Yan Yu was now somewhat curious. What kind of person was Yu Qianzhou to be able to make this woman, who always laughed at everything, care so much about him? I heard that he entered the Wen clan's shop and hasn't come out yet. Just as Yan Yu finished speaking, she saw that the Enchantress of 100 Charms was about to soar into the sky. She hurriedly pulled her back and shook her head, saying, since he's already here, why are you in such a hurry? The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly as they please. Otherwise they will be killed. Don't be too happy until sorrow comes. The Enchantress of 100 Charms paused. She could hear the teasing tone in Yan Yu's words. She then angrily pinched Yan Yu's voluptuous chest and said, you're making fun of me. However, she still gave up on the thought of flying over and quickly left the lotus pond. Yan Yu flashed and caught up to her. She pulled her back and said, I want to see what kind of man this Yu Qianzhou is to be able to make Big Sister fall head over heels for him. You're still talking. The Enchantress of 100 Charms shouted and the other giggled. The two of them chattered as they left. It was always easier for women who were in the same boat to become friends. Two beautiful women, one more seductive than the other, appeared on the street at the same time. They immediately attracted everyone's attention and the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. The two women ignored them and went straight to the Wen clan's shop. When the shopkeeper of the shop saw the two of them, he was stunned for a moment. He immediately greeted them with cupped hands and a smile. So it's owner Yen and the top courtesan of Spring Slumber Brothel. Your presence really brings light to my humble shop. May I ask what you two would like to buy from my humble shop? Shopkeeper Wen is too polite. Yen smiled. They were doing business on the same street so they knew each other. He then asked, I heard that Xianxia is in your shop. Is that true? Shopkeeper Wen pondered for a moment. He thought that everyone had seen this and there was nothing to hide. He then nodded and said, That's right, he is here. Could it be that you two are here to look for him? Chapter 629. Temptress replied, I'm an old friend of Xianxia. I heard that he came to Cornucopia so I came to see him. Please inform him that Yi-kun is looking for him. He naturally knows who I am. If it weren't for Wen Lanfeng, she would have gone in to find him. Shopkeeper Wen's face was solemn. Xianxia had a close relationship with the Wen family's ancestor. He really didn't see that this seductive sleeping spring house top courtesan was actually a friend of Xianxia. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relationship between the two? He didn't dare to neglect and immediately cupped his hands and said, Please wait a moment, I'll go and inform Mr. Yu. Thank you. Temptress respectfully sent him off. Upstairs, Xianxia was swinging his arm to fool Wen Lanfeng, causing Lu Yanqing to frown incessantly. Wen Lanfeng seemed to be possessed and even admired him to the extreme. In his heart he was full of envy that Bai Chongqun had accepted a good disciple. The shopkeeper ran up and saluted them first and then said to Xianxia, Mr. Yu, there is a woman named Yi-kun looking for you downstairs. She said that she is your old friend. Do you want to see her? Xianxia was helpless. This was expected. He knew it would be like this. He sighed and said, Bring her to the backyard first. I'll go down later. After that he sat on the side in a daze. The shopkeeper took the order and went down. When Lu Yanqing heard Yi-kun, she immediately remembered the charming woman who sang in Sleeping Spring House. Wasn't she called Yi-kun? When Lanfeng saw him in a daze and couldn't help but ask, Who is Yi-kun? It seems that you don't want to see her. It's a long story. Xianxia sighed. He felt a headache whenever he saw the 100 Charms enchantress. This unclear relationship really made him feel conflicted. The temptress and Yen were led to the backyard. The shopkeeper informed them that Xianxia was talking to Wen Lanfeng and would come down shortly. He asked them to wait for a moment. After saying that, the shopkeeper did not disturb them and went to busy himself. Yen saw Amano and the other three sitting in the courtyard, so she went over to greet Li Qiuxiang. The temptress looked around and sighed. Back then she was a dignified palace master, and Xianxia was just a small disciple who worked as a laborer in Ongquangtsung, and he was almost killed by her. Now things were really different from before. His name was known to everyone in the cultivation world and he was even more famous than himself. Moreover, the people who came and went were all top figures in the cultivation world of China. It was really hard to understand. He had been jumping around outside and causing trouble everywhere. It was a miracle that he had survived until now. But unexpectedly he climbed higher and higher, climbing to a height that many people could not reach. At this moment, 3 figures landed in the backyard at the same time. It was Nongzhu who brought Zi and Hibiscus. As soon as Nongzhu arrived, people in the yard came over and saluted, Senior Nongzhu. Nongzhu waved her hand casually, indicating that there was no need to be so polite. But when she saw Yenyu, her expression was not friendly. Yenyu lowered her head secretly and cursed in her heart. She did not know when she had offended this senior who always gave her a bad look. Zi accidentally glanced at the temptress and was stunned for a moment. Then she cheered, Ah, Sister Yi, why are you here? The temptress's eyes also lit up, and the two of them held hands excitedly. Especially Zi, she did not have many friends and suddenly met one. She was really happy. When Xianxia, who was upstairs, heard the words purple dress, he was startled. He immediately tiptoed to the window and like a thief he stuck his head out and looked down. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but when he did his face turned green. Let alone purple dress, even that girl was fine. In addition to the temptress there was also Yenyu. What the hell? Frong was also here. What was Nongzhu doing? Why did she bring her here? When Lan Feng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and found that they could not understand this guy. They looked at his strange behavior. Nongzhu saw that her daughter was so happy, so he forgot about Yenyu and asked with a smile, "See, who is this? She made you so happy." "Master, this is Sister Yikun. She was my best friend when I was in the cultivation world of Wuxia. He helped me a lot," Ziyi said excitedly. Nongzhu suddenly smiled and nodded to the temptress. "In that case, I have to thank you. My disciple doesn't know what to do. Thank you for taking care of him." He wasn't just saying this casually. Since he had helped Ziyi before, he would remember this favor. "Senior, you're welcome. I did not do anything," the temptress said respectfully. "Well, Miss Yi, if you need me in the future, you can come to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea to find me. Maybe I can help you a little." Nongzhu smiled. This could be considered as giving a promise. The temptress was overjoyed and immediately bowed. "Thank you, Senior. Thank you." She had heard of Mr. Nongzhu's name. She did not expect to accidentally make friends with a middle-stage divine transformation realm master, which made her overjoyed. Nongzhu suddenly said, "Huh?" He stared at the almost transparent clothes of the temptress and asked suspiciously, "You have practiced the jade charm skill? Who is Qiu Mainyang from the cultivation world of Huaxia to you?" The temptress was stunned and immediately replied, "Senior, I have indeed practiced the jade charm skill. Senior Qiu was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace more than 1,000 years ago. I found the jade charm skill by accident when I was sorting out the relics of the past. It was left by Senior Qiu. Are you old friends with the ancestors of the Caprice Palace? Time really flies. It has been more than 1,000 years. At that time, my cultivation was only at the middle stage of the crossing calamity stage." Nongzhu sighed with emotion. The charming woman called Qiu Mainyang appeared in her mind. Her cultivation was one level higher than his at that time. They met by chance and did not know each other's background. They did not want to inquire about each other's background. They just fooled around for a period of time because they were attracted to each other. That feeling was really ecstatic. After hanging out with each other for a period of time, they each had their own matters to attend to, and after that they never saw each other again. Nongzhu suddenly froze and asked weakly, "What did you just say? You said that Qiu Mainyang is the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace?" "Yes. Senior, don't you know?" the temptress asked. "Qiu Mainyang, good name." Yu Qianchou, who was upstairs, revealed a cheeky grin and asked when Lan Feng, who had also walked to the window to watch, "Senior Wen, have you heard about the romantic history of this Qiu Mainyang and Senior Nongzhu?" When Lan Feng replied disapprovingly, "I have never heard of Qiu Mainyang. Nongzhu's romantic history is well known in the cultivation world. Who knows how many women he is hooked up with? With his cultivation talent, if he spent half of his time on women on cultivation, I am afraid he would have been ranked among the top 10 experts. You are the same, spending all your time on Lu Yanqing." Yu Qianchou secretly smiled, but when he saw the women below, he suddenly stopped smiling. It seemed that he was the same. "Haha. Maybe it has been too long and I have forgotten." Nongzhu laughed. He was sweating in his heart. The woman he hooked up with was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace? At that time, although his cultivation talent was good, he was just a rogue cultivator in the middle stage of crossing calamity. At that time, the Caprice Palace was already a big force, but he dared to make a cuckold of the leader of the Caprice Palace. If he was found out, he would die without a whole body. That was dangerous, too dangerous. Nongzhu rejoiced and asked subconsciously, "How is she now?" After asking, he immediately realized that he had asked the wrong question. Since Qiu Mainyang said that it was a relic, she was naturally dead. Moreover, if Qiu Mainyang was still alive now, her cultivation must have reached the deification stage. If her cultivation had reached the deification stage, there was no reason that he did not know. Although his question was nonsense, the temptress still answered honestly, "Senior Qiu passed away 1,000 years ago." This sentence made Nongzhu sigh. Looking back on the past, she could not count how many women she had slept with, but those who were still alive could be counted on one hand. "Qiu Mainyang, have a safe journey." Nongzhu sighed to the sky. The fate of life was so magical. Qiu Mainyang's cultivation was higher than his, and now he did not know how many times she had reincarnated. But he was still alive after 1,000 years. Maybe this was the meaning of cultivation. To live. The temptress also suspected the relationship between him and Qiu Mainyang, but Qiu Mainyang was the ancestor of the sect after all. She did not dare to think deeply about it. But she was more or less glad. She did not expect that the ancestor of the sect had a relationship with the famous Mr. Nongzhu. If the sect encountered any trouble, it would be easier for her to ask for help. This was also the benefit of the ancestor. Furong, come here. Ziyi waved to Furong and called her over. She pointed to the temptress and said, "This is Sister Yi whom I often mentioned to you. She is also very familiar with you, Xianxia. You can also call her Sister Yi." Sister Yi. Furong said obediently. Ziyi pointed at her and introduced her to the temptress. "This is Furong, Yu Qianqiu's woman." Yu Qianqiu, who was upstairs, stared at the lively Ziyi and rolled his eyes. "Yu Qianqiu's woman?" The temptress was startled, then smiled and said, "Hello, Sister Furong." Yanyu looked around. She looked at the temptress and then at Furong. She kept thinking about which woman looked more like Yu Qianqiu's woman. She did not know that she was also one of them. If she knew, how would she feel? "Sister Yi, aren't you in the Chinese cultivation world? Why are you here?" Ziyi asked curiously. The temptress pointed to the building and said with a smile, "I happened to come to the cornucopia. I heard that Yu Qianqiu is here, so I came to see." "He's here?" Ziyi and Furong asked almost at the same time. The temptress was surprised and said, "You don't know?" Ziyi and Furong looked at Nongzhu at the same time. The former asked suspiciously, "Master, is Yu Qianqiu really here?" Her tone was a little sad. Nongzhu coughed guiltily and said, "How would I know?" Ever since he knew that Yu Qianqiu was in the Sleeping Spring building, he was already furious. He did not want the two girls to meet Yu Qianqiu. Why would he tell them that Yu Qianqiu was here? If he was not worried that something might happen, he would not have brought the two girls here. Chapter 630. When Lanfeng, who was upstairs, was confused. Nongzhu knew that Yu Qianqiu was here. Why did she say she didn't know? She tilted her head and looked at Yu Qianqiu for help. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Since she knew he was here, there was no point in delaying, so he left through the window, as he didn't get a satisfactory answer. She didn't want to interrogate her master in front of so many people, so she said to Furong, "Let's go up and look for him." "No need." Yu Qianqiu walked down the stairs with a smile. Ziyi shouted excitedly, "Big liar." As a result, Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. How could she call him a big liar in front of so many people? How could he put his face? Fortunately, Furong was gentle and lovely. She ran to hold his arm and immediately restored a smile on his face. He held Furong's shoulders and took a good look. He smiled faintly and said, "Are you all right over there?" Furong nodded with a bright face and said, "Good. Good. I'll talk to you later." Yu Qianqiu held her hand and let go. Furong nodded and stood aside obediently. It was this gentle and harmonious scene that made many people envious. Lu Yanqing didn't know when she had also walked to the window and was silently watching below. When Lanfeng tilted his head and looked, Yu Qianqiu looked at the temptress of 100 charms. When he was about to walk over, Ziyi stopped him and asked excitedly, "Big liar, when did you come?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and asked word by word, "Who's the big liar? Please pay attention to the way you address me." If it weren't for Nongzhu's covetous eyes, he would have turned hostile on the spot. Ziyi didn't care and wasn't angry. She smiled and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, how much money did you cheat while I was away? Remember to treat me later." Nongzhu looked at her daughter and was speechless. She was indeed a little rude. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could seal her mouth. Every time they met, she would not say anything nice. Taking a deep breath, he squeezed out a smile and said, "You're getting married soon. I forgot to congratulate you. Have you received the congratulatory gift that I asked your master to bring for you?" "Mary?" Ziyi opened her mouth wide and was stunned. Nongzhu wished she could cover Yu Qianqiu's mouth with her own. Ziyi was going to get married? Why hadn't Nongzhu mentioned it before? When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other, then they disappeared from the window and suddenly appeared in the courtyard, causing a group of people to salute them. "Nongzhu, what do you mean?" When Lanfeng asked somewhat unhappily, "Ziyi's marriage is such a big matter. Why have I never heard you mention it? Could it be that you look down on me when Lanfeng?" Lu Yanqing also said unhappily, "Nongzhu, we watched Ziyi grow up. Don't tell me we don't even have the qualifications to drink a cup of wedding wine? Who said I'm getting married? Why didn't I know?" Ziyi said blankly. Nongzhu could not explain, so she simply put the blame on Yu Qianqiu and said, "Don't listen to this boy's nonsense. He doesn't speak the truth." Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu again. They were very suspicious, as if they were doubting his honesty. Yu Qianqiu's personality was that of someone who would twist words and force logic even if he didn't suffer a loss. How could he stand being wronged like this? F***ck, he cursed on the spot. Who's talking nonsense? You were clearly the one who told me that. Oh. Yu Qianqiu suddenly revealed an expression of sudden realization. I understand now. You must have come up with a reason for Ziyi's marriage in order to swindle my treasured sword. I was wondering why I didn't hear anything before. Then he pointed to Nongzhu and said to Zi, "See, look carefully. Your master is the real liar." Shut up. Nongzhu was embarrassed into anger and said, "Who cheated you of your sword? You're ruthless. I can't explain it to you." Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand and said coldly, "Give me back my sword. Don't tell me you didn't take it." "Who took your sword?" Nongzhu shouted angrily. The two of them quarreled directly and both of them argued. The people present did not know who was telling the truth and who was lying. Those who did not know that Yu Qianqiu's master was Bai Chongqun admired Yu Qianqiu's courage. He dared to contradict Nongzhu, who was in the spirit-severing stage. "Boy, if you keep talking, believe it or not, I will kill you." Nongzhu directly began to threaten. "Kill me? I'm afraid it won't be that easy." Yu Qianqiu rolled up his sleeves directly as if he was going to fight. When Lan Feng could not stand it anymore and immediately shouted, "Shut up, all of you. Stop arguing." "Yu Qianqiu, is this the sword you were talking about?" Ziyi held an ancient sword in her hand and shook it. When Lan Feng glanced at it casually and his pupils suddenly shrank. Lu Yanqing's eyes were also looking at the sword through the green gauze. "Yes, it's this one. Give it back to me." Yu Qianqiu reached out to grab it. Ziyi pouted and threw it directly back into her storage bag. Then a black light flashed in her hand and a purple-black bamboo stick appeared. She shouted, "Hit!" Without warning, she directly hit Yu Qianqiu's head. When she raised the bamboo rod, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have a telepathic connection and guessed where she was going to strike. With a whoosh, he dodged to the side and roared, "You're crazy." Ziyi's stick missed Yu Qianqiu's body and she was slightly stunned. Her cultivation was not a little higher than Yu Qianqiu's. In addition, it was a close-range sneak attack. It was reasonable to say that it was difficult for him to dodge with his speed. Unexpectedly, he seemed to be able to predict it and actually dodged in advance, anticipating the enemy's first move. When Lan Feng, Lu Yanqing and Nongzhu looked at each other and were somewhat surprised. They all saw that Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed, but in advance as if he had predicted it. It should be known that in a battle, being able to predict the enemy's first move was a great advantage. It was often a matter of life and death. This was a kind of sharp intuition given by God, or precious experience accumulated after a long period of fighting. Not everyone could have this kind of intuition. And some people, even if they fought for a lifetime, could not understand a thing or two in this aspect. To be exact, people who had this kind of magical intuition could be described as people who were blessed by God. Even if the three of them had reached the soul formation stage, it was difficult to use this intuition in a fight. Maybe they could occasionally see it, but they would doubt it and dare not follow their intuition unless they had to. After all, if they made a wrong step in a fight, the consequences would be unimaginable. Maybe it was a coincidence. The three of them secretly said in their hearts, "Fight." Ziyi's attack missed and she was not satisfied. She flashed and rushed to hit again with the stick. Although she did not see anything on the surface, she was stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words. When her master gave her the sword, he said that it was a gift from Yu Qianqiu, which made her very happy. Who knew that when she met Yu Qianqiu he wanted to take back the sword? She was very unhappy to take back the thing that was given to her, so she had to hit Yu Qianqiu to vent her anger. F***ck. Before Ziyi could move, Yu Qianqiu let out a ghastly cry and once again dodged to the side in advance. Ziyi immediately pounced on empty air. He dodged in advance again. When Lan Feng and the other two looked at each other in surprise, Ziyi missed. Before her feet touched the ground, she dodged to the side and chased after Yu Qianqiu. She was hurt by this big liar. How could she be satisfied if she did not hit him with the stick? However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He suddenly twisted his body and moved to the side. Ziyi's bamboo stick brushed past his back and missed. Even Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know why he suddenly did this. In any case, his body followed his heart's desire, and his body followed a flash of thought. When he really heard the sound of dodging, he rejoiced. This girl was stubborn and did not know how to control her strength. If she really hit him, it would be embarrassing. At first, Furong thought that the two of them were joking. However, when she saw Zi continuously chasing after Yu Qianqiu, it did not seem like a joke. Furong immediately asked anxiously, "Zi, why are you hitting him?" Hit. A purplish-black light left Ziyi's hand and shot towards Yu Qianqiu with a whistling sound. The more Ziyi could not hit him, the angrier she became. She actually used her sword to control the bamboo stick to chase after him. She was fast, but Yu Qianqiu's reaction was not slow. He did not even turn his head and bent down. A gust of wind swept over his head. However, before he could raise his head, he subconsciously dodged to the side and the bamboo stick that shot back was dodged again. A purplish-black shadow shuttled around the courtyard, forcing Yu Qianqiu to jump up and down, dodge left and right and jump back and forth. He did not even have the chance to speak. However, the shadow could not touch him. The purplish-black shadow always brushed past him. When Lan Feng and the other two were dumbfounded. They did not feel that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed at all. Instead, it was as if they had seen something incredible. Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed. He dodged in advance every time based on his intuition. Even if the bamboo stick suddenly changed direction, he could still react in advance. It was incredible that he could use intuition to this extent. Unfortunately, when Bai Chongqun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, Nongzhu was not there. If he was there and heard Bai Chongqun's words, he would not be so surprised. When Bai Chongqun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, he said that this incantation was not very powerful. The secret of mastering it was reflected in the 4 words foresight. Once one was proficient in it, it would benefit him for the rest of his life. Zi busied herself for a long time, and her face was filled with astonishment. She suddenly put away her bamboo stick and stared at Yu Qianqiu as if remembering something. When Bai Chongqun had said those words, she had been there and now she remembered. "You're so stubborn. Is there something wrong with your brain?" Yu Qianqiu finally had time to speak. He rolled up his sleeves and said fiercely, "I am the strongest master below the deification stage and I am not weak. You forced me to do this, so don't blame me for being rude." His face was ferocious like a hungry wolf about to eat a lamb. He was ready to fight back. "Have you mastered the animal play?" Zi pointed at him and asked in a daze. "Why do you care what I have mastered?" "Animal play?" Yu Qianqiu shouted halfway and then stopped. His face froze and he suddenly recalled the scene just now. It seemed that he had been dodging based on intuition. Chapter 631. Recalling the process of dodging earlier, he recalled what Bai Chongqun had said when he taught him the animal moves. When he saw the animal world in the Jade Archive, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After listening to Bai Chongqun's words, he decided to give it a try. Although he was just giving it a try, he still put in a lot of effort because he had full trust in Bai Chongqun. Whenever he was free, he would put his heart and soul into it. He couldn't say that he was very proficient, but he was pretty much done. To be honest, after practicing for so long, he really didn't find any benefits. However, he found that the more he practiced, the more his movements resembled those of the animals in the mountains. He didn't dare to show it in front of others as it was too embarrassing. However, some things were always like this. The effort he put in would not go to waste. Yu Qianqiu stood there and smiled foolishly. He was pleasantly surprised. "Animal moves?" Nongzhu's eyes lit up. She raised an eyebrow and rubbed her chin. Her expression was unpredictable. When Lan Feng took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu, then asked Nongzhu, "Was it he who taught you the magic incantation?" When she said the word he, she slightly paused. Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed as she stared at Nongzhu. Nongzhu nodded with a sinister smile. "Yu Qianqiu, am I right?" Zi asked expectantly. She was also practicing the animal play, but her movements were still bumpy. She couldn't even be said to be smooth. One could imagine how depressed she was. Little did she know that she had grown up in the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea and rarely left the island. She had never seen many of the animals in the animal moves, and she didn't even have any impression of some of the common poultry. How could she master it just by relying on the pictures in the Jade Archive? Naturally, the effort was not worth the reward. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned his head and snorted, "I don't know." The pleading expression on Ziyi's face froze. She said angrily, "Let me try again." Her figure flashed, and a series of shadows appeared in the courtyard. It was a dazzling sight. All of them rushed towards Yu Qianqiu, making it hard to tell which was real and which was fake. F***ck. You're still coming. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry and began to jump around again. Furong, who was at the side, said anxiously, "Ziyi, don't hit him anymore." However, he didn't listen to her advice at all. Amano and the others looked at each other. Knowing that they were all acquaintances and wouldn't kill anyone, they didn't bother. Form displacement transposition. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and smiled. This was Nongzhu's signature incantation. The allure demonic lady looked at Ziyi's familiar movement technique with suspicion. She wondered why it was so similar to the Great Illusion technique. However, there was still a difference between the two. As soon as Ziyi used the shape displacement transposition, Nongzhu subconsciously looked at the Enchantress of 100 Charms. In fact, this technique was created by him after he saw Qiu Meinyang use the Phantom Great technique in the past. However, with his extraordinary talent, his self-created transfiguration transposition was even sharper than Phantom Shadow. The biggest use of Phantom Shadow was to confuse people's eyes and ears. The shape displacement transposition created by Nongzhu could not only confuse people's eyes and ears, but it was also good at speed. It was also supported by attack. The fast and elusive way of attack was hard to guard against. It was quite powerful. The higher one's cultivation, the more effective it was. However, what surprised Wen Lanfeng and the others was that Yu Qianqiu, who had been a little flustered in the beginning, now seemed a little elegant when he moved and dodged, giving off a transcendent feeling of walking on water. They were immediately shocked when they observed carefully. They saw that Yu Qianqiu actually closed his eyes with a faint smile on his face. No matter how many phantoms she created, he was free to move freely. The muscles on Nongzhu's face twitched. It was the first time in his life that someone could deal with his shape displacement transposition with his eyes closed. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had no choice. The phantoms that Ziyi created all over the courtyard always conflicted with his vision and intuition. He clearly felt that the opponent was attacking him from behind, but he also saw someone was attacking in front of him. The feeling of being in a dilemma was too painful and he was almost in danger again and again. Should he see it with his own eyes or follow his intuition? After a period of embarrassment, he firmly believed in the animal tricks taught by Changchun. In order not to let his vision interfere with his judgment, he simply closed his eyes. In an instant, the whole world was far away from him. The function of shape displacement transposition to confuse people's eyes and ears had no effect on him. He abandoned vision and hearing and only followed his intuition. In an instant he entered a very strange state. He felt like an eagle soaring in the wind. After spotting his prey, he could immediately judge the prey's escape route. With a preemptive dive, he could accurately make the prey fall into his claws. He felt like a fish in the water. No matter how fast the hunter's attack was, as long as there was a little fluctuation in the water, he could quickly catch it, quickly avoid the attack and escape. The more confident he was, the calmer he was. His movements were more elegant and free, like a rabbit rising and a cuckoo falling naturally. It had to be said that the cultivation of the tribulation stage provided him with a lot of convenience, giving him many abilities that ordinary people could not avoid. The more Ziyi fought, the more impatient she became. She increased her speed to the extreme, but she always felt that she was just a little bit away from her opponent. She was on the verge of breaking down. In the eyes of the audience, it seemed that Ziyi deliberately let Yu Qianqiu go. She always attacked after Yu Qianqiu dodged and she always missed by a little bit. The two of them seemed to be playing around. In fact, this was already the limit of Yu Qianqiu's dodging. If he encountered an expert in the soul formation stage with the attack speed of the soul formation stage, it would be difficult for him to dodge the opponent's attack, even if he could predict the opponent's attack first. After all, the difference in cultivation was too great. In terms of speed, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. It was difficult to make up for this with techniques. However, for those below the soul formation stage, Ziyi at the end of the tribulation stage was an example. When Lanfeng and the other two were shocked. This guy actually dodged using his intuition from the beginning to the end. This was too exaggerated. Maybe it was nothing now, but when his cultivation reached the soul formation stage, it would be incredible. It should be known that most of the time soul formation stage cultivators fought with their strength. The probability of them fighting in close combat was very high. Once they fought face to face, they could predict the opponent's attack first and support it with attacks. It was a very scary thing. Dodging is so boring. I'm not fighting anymore, Ziyi shouted impatiently. The shadows surrounding everyone gradually disappeared. Zi looked angrily at Yu Qianqiu, who also stopped. Why are you not fighting anymore? Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and waved excitedly. Come, let's play for a while more. He was addicted to playing. This feeling was too wonderful. It was a little uncomfortable to stop playing when he was having fun. Zi stared at him and blinked her big eyes. She put away the rod in her hand and ran over with a smile. How do you practice? Teach me again. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, his face immediately darkened. He lost all interest. When he was on Obedient Island, it was not like he did not teach her. It was torture. She was asked to imitate the form of a chicken. She looked at the picture in the Jade Archive, spread her arms and flew like a bird. Yu Qianqiu was so shocked that he took a few steps back. He was speechless. In the end, he asked her to change to something else. In the end, Yu Qianqiu wanted to slap himself. It was his fault for asking for it. This woman was an idiot in some aspects. He was fooled by an idiot. What else could he do but ask for a slap? Hence, he cursed angrily and quickly ran away. If I teach you again, I'll change my surname to Chou. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Nongzhu, who was staring at him. He coughed and said, I don't have time now. We'll talk about it later. He stretched out his hand and said, Give me back my sword. Since you gave it to me, it's mine. I'm not giving it back. Zi rejected him decisively. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth but decided not to say anything. It was his bad luck to run into this father and daughter pair. He couldn't get his sword back. He turned around and walked towards the temptress. He asked with a smile, Why are you here? I'm here to broaden my horizons. I heard that you were here, so I came to look for you. With so many people around, the temptress couldn't say much. She could only say it this way. She giggled and said, I'm not familiar with this place. I'll follow you from now on. Yu Qianqiu smiled knowingly. The two of them started asking each other some irrelevant questions. Yan Yu, who was beside the temptress, looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was looking straight ahead. Suddenly her nose twitched. She smelled an unforgettable body odor. His eyes abruptly widened as he sized up Yu Qianqiu's body. Then he looked at Tianye's group of four. His complexion turned deathly pale as he stared at Yu Qianqiu. Others might not be able to tell, but how could she not recognize the body odor of the first man she had a skin-to-skin contact with? It was exactly the same as Yu Qianqiu in front of her. This ability to distinguish had nothing to do with one's cultivation. No matter how high one's cultivation was, one might not be able to tell. As long as she really cared about him, it would be hard for her to mistake him. This was a gift given to women. Perhaps she would forget it after a long time. However, she hadn't been separated from him for long. She hugged the pillow in the room and sniffed it. There was still his body odor. In addition, the two of them were similar. Tian Yi and the other three people who followed Niu Yid were also present. Moreover, she knew that Niu Yid had changed his appearance. The Niu Yid she saw was not his original face. With so many coincidences, it was hard for her to mistake him. She guessed who Yu Qianqiu was in an instant. However, Yu Qianqiu did not even look at her. That kind of indifference at such a close distance made her feel like her heart was being torn apart. The temptress inadvertently noticed Yan Yu's reaction. She saw her body tremble slightly and her face pale as she stared at Yu Qianqiu. She could not help but be stunned. Yan Yu, what's wrong? Yu Qianqiu looked at her. His expression froze. He thought to himself, oh no. Yan Yu looked miserable, but she forced a smile and shook her head. It's nothing. I remembered that I have something to do in the building. I'll go back first. She bowed to Wen Lanfeng and the others. Then she quickly left. Everyone present could see that something was wrong. Nongzhu, who knew that Niu Yid was Yu Qianqiu, snorted coldly at Yu Qianqiu. After Lu Yanqing watched Yan Yu leave, she also turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. She sighed slightly behind the green veil. Chapter 632. The atmosphere suddenly became a little heavy. Although Wen Lanfeng did not know what happened, she knew that no one wanted to say anything. So she called the manager of the shop and arranged the rooms for everyone. Hibiscus naturally lived with Yu Qianqiu. After all, their identities had been made public, so there was nothing to hide. After returning to the room, Yu Qianqiu still looked a little strange. Hibiscus grabbed his arm and asked weakly, "What's wrong with you? Are you unhappy that I came here without telling you? Then I'll ask Senior Nongzhu to take me back." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He turned to look at her and suddenly smiled. He said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not unhappy. I'm just thinking that the cornucopia is very lively. If I take Hibiscus out for a walk, I don't know if Hibiscus will be happy. I'll be happy. Hibiscus suddenly became energetic. She held Yu Qianchou's arm and complained, "When Zi and I came here, Senior Nongzhu told us not to run around. We saw that it was very lively down there from the God of Wealth Peak. I've wanted to see it for a long time. Will you take me there now?" Although she spoke in a questioning tone, her face was filled with hope. Yu Qianchou did not have the heart to refuse her. He immediately took her hand and said with a smile, "Let's go. I'll take you there right now." Furong's face was full of joy as she followed him out. Just as the two of them walked into the courtyard, they heard someone shouting from upstairs, "Where are you going?" The two of them raised their heads and saw Zi poking her head out of the window. Hibiscus smiled brightly and said, "Let's go outside and have a look." Zi let out a scream and jumped down from the window without saying anything. She grabbed Hibiscus's arm and complained, "Hibiscus, why didn't you call me when you went out to play?" Then she turned to stare at Yu Qianchou and said, "I'll go too." Yu Qianchou just wanted to refuse and ask her to go back, but he saw Hibiscus's eyes showed that she was expecting him to agree. Yu Qianchou immediately lost his temper and did not say anything to show that he agreed. Zi cheered, then pulled Hibiscus along and walked out. Yu Qianchou immediately felt his scalp tingle. A woman shopping alone was not something an ordinary man could handle. Two women shopping together, it was impossible not to be mentally prepared. Yu Qianchou took a deep breath, patted his chest and followed behind them. Nongzhu looked down from the window upstairs and shook her head speechlessly. Beside her, Wen Lanfeng asked thoughtfully, "Nongzhu, what's going on with the marriage in purple?" He would never admit to this even if he was beaten to death. Nongzhu shook her head and said, "That boy is talking nonsense. There's no such thing." As soon as Yu Qianchou came out of the Wen family's merchant shop, he immediately attracted many people's attention. Yu Qianchou glanced around coldly, but the two women didn't care so much. They looked around excitedly, their eyes sparkling. Starting from the shop next to the Wen family's merchant shop, they did not let go of anything. They excitedly ran in hand. Yu Qianchou was speechless. He could only follow them in, and he had to maintain a gentleman's demeanor while watching them pick things. After a while, the two women piled up a lot of colorful things on the counter. Yu Qianchou leaned on the side of the counter, trying to distinguish what the two were selling. Suddenly, he heard Zi banging the counter and saying, "It's almost done. How much?" The shopkeeper pulled out an abacus, and after some calculations he smiled and said, "Since the two of you have sold a lot, I'll give you a discount. I won't count the small change, just pay 1,800,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Is that okay?" Yu Qianchou fiddled with the things on the counter and frowned. "What are these things? Are they worth 1.8 million upper-grade spirit stones?" When Furong heard the price, she was shocked. She had never spent so many spirit stones before, and she had never even seen it before. Ever since she left Fuxian Island with Yu Qianchou, she had bought some things wantonly in Deyang City, but they were all in gold and silver. When she suddenly heard 1.8 million upper-grade spirit stones, she immediately pulled Zi and said, "It's too expensive. Let's not buy it. He has money." Zi pointed at Yu Qianchou. Then she took Furong's storage bag and put all the things in front of her into it. Then she took her own pile. She pulled Furong and left. Yu Qianchou paid the bill speechlessly, and the shopkeeper sent them out with a smile. When he reached the end of the street, he realized that the two women were nowhere to be seen. He tried to go to the shop next door, and he found that the two women were indeed picking things inside. He smiled and walked in with a toothache. The prosperity of cornucopia was extremely extravagant. There were all kinds of dazzling items for you to choose from. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had money. For Yu Qianchou, there was no need to buy many things. However, as long as the two women liked and looked beautiful, they would buy them all regardless of whether they were useful or not. Fortunately, Yu Qianchou did not lack money at all. However, he still felt the pinch from spending money. It was not that he felt the pinch from spending money, but some things were useless to him. It was a complete waste of spirit stones. He gritted his teeth for half a day and swept through the entire cornucopia. Every shop was the happiest when they met such customers. When the two women felt embarrassed about spending money, they bought more than 10 storage bags. Only then did the three of them return to Wen Clan's shop. When the two women returned, they immediately went into the room to check their spoils of war. Yu Qianqiu calmly asked Demo Xiaojun to go out with him. As soon as they reached the yard, a head poked out of the window on the top floor and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, come up for a moment." It was Noizhu. Yu Qianqiu asked Demo Xiaojun to wait for a moment and directly jumped in through the window. Seeing that Wen Lanfeng and the other two were there, he asked Nongzhu after saluting, "What's the matter?" Nongzhu put her hands behind her back and said expressionlessly, "You and Yo Yid are old acquaintances. Help me contact him. I have something to ask him." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He did not know what Nongzhu was doing. He asked suspiciously, "Why are you looking for him?" Nongzhu pointed to Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said, "Well, they also want a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. They're all old friends. I must help them." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Since they are old friends, don't hurt them. But now is not the time to tell them the secret of limit-breaking pills. He pondered for a moment and said, "This is not a big problem. After a period of time I will personally send it to you two seniors. I still have something to do now." When Lanfeng smiled and waved his hand. "Since it is not a big problem, it doesn't matter if it is a little late. If you have something to do, go ahead." Lu Yanqing did not say anything and stood quietly on the side. Unexpectedly, Nongzhu snorted coldly and said, "Come on, what can you do? It is nothing more than stealing chickens and dogs. Solve this matter first." "I am stealing chickens and dogs?" When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he became furious. He raised his neck and roared, "Your disciple Zi spent more than 800 million high-grade spirit stones in half a day. I'm busy trying to earn back the money I spent. Don't you think I'm busy? If you give me 800 million upper-level spiritual stones now, I will immediately solve the matter you mentioned." 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. The room immediately quieted down. They were all shocked by such a large number. Nongzhu then asked weakly, "Zi spent so much money in half a day? Is it possible?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "I also hope it is impossible, but your disciple can't wait to put the whole cornucopia into her storage bag. 800 million is too little. If you don't believe me, you can go and have a look now. I will leave first." Then he directly ran out of the window. The three people looked at each other. After a long time, Nongzhu turned around and said, "I will go down to see what Zi has done. She can spend 800 million. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and followed. They also wanted to see it. When the three people came to Zi's room, they saw all kinds of things in the room. Zi and Hibiscus were chattering and laughing in the pile of things, like two thieves dividing the spoils. Seeing the three people coming, the two women casually threw away the things in their hands and saluted. The three people were completely speechless when they saw the messy things in the room. There was a big clean and transparent bottle at Nongzhu's feet. He picked it up and looked at it. With the experience of the three people, they knew what the bottle was at a glance. It was something used to pretend to be a dead body and extract the corpse poison. It was used by the more obscure alchemists to refine pills. Nongzhu held the bottle and asked Zi, "You bought this?" Zi nodded. Nongzhu asked again, "Why did you buy this?" Zi said bluntly, "It looks good." Nongzhu coughed and asked, "How much did you spend this time?" Zi thought for a moment and looked at Hibiscus. "The money we spent together should be less than 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones." 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones? Nongzhu was shocked. She looked at the things in the room and said in disbelief, "These things are worth 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones?" But Zi moved away and pointed at the dozens of storage bags on the table behind her. "The room is a little small. There are not enough things in one storage bag. I haven't taken out the other things." Nongzhu and the other two people were speechless when they looked at the dozens of bulging storage bags. Now they really believed that they had spent so much money. Zi looked at the three people who were silent and asked curiously, "Master, what do you want from me?" "Nothing, you can continue." Nongzhu waved her hand and glanced at the various things in the room. She turned around and left with cold sweat on her forehead. When the three people left, the two women continued to talk about the spoils of war. When the three people returned to the top floor, Lu Yen, who had been silent, sighed and said, "It seems that Yu Qianqiu said that Zi spent 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. He didn't count Hibiscus in it. 800 million upper-level spiritual stones spent in half a day. Oh my god. She went shopping and spent 100 years of our Wen family's savings." When Lanfeng patted Nongzhu's shoulder and said, "If Zi wants to find someone, she must find a very rich family. Our Wen family's financial resources are definitely not enough. I think only Yin Baikong's financial resources are worthy of her. But I think Yin Baikong will also retreat when he sees her. Don't make sarcastic remarks here. Z only did it once in a while. Nongzhu rolled her eyes and snorted, that kid is rich. Spending some of his money is giving him face. When Lanfeng laughed and said, but I see that Yu Qianqiu's face is dark. It seems that he is very unwilling to give face. Chapter 633. There was a restaurant diagonally opposite the Wen family's shop. Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing sat opposite each other at a table near the window on the second floor. They seemed to have no interest in the dishes on the table. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were always paying attention to the entrance of the Wen family's shop, while Man Hu was paying attention to Yan Zhuixing's expression. Ever since Yan Zhuixing knew that Yu Qianqiu had brought the two women to Cornucopia to buy things wantonly, Yan Zhuixing ran out regardless of his advice and followed Yu Qianqiu around Cornucopia for a long time. After following Yu Qianqiu into the Wen family's shop, the two came to this restaurant. There are a lot of people who have bad intentions towards you. It's not rational for you to run out like this. Man Hu transmitted his voice. The two sat here and had been communicating by voice transmission. The occasional glances from the surroundings were very suspicious. Yan Zhuixing narrowed his eyes and said, there are also a lot of people who have bad intentions towards Yu Qianqiu. He is also running around everywhere. If he is not afraid, why should I be afraid? It's not the same. Wen Lanfeng is more deterrent than master. With Wen Lanfeng's support, no one dares to touch him openly. Man Hu said. It's hard to say if he goes out. It's safe in Cornucopia, don't worry too much. Yan Zhuixing smiled and avoided the topic. Yu Qianqiu is really rich. He had spent a lot of money on the two women on this trip. Seems that he values those two women very much. This guy is ruthless and shameless. He doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. I didn't expect him to have such a tender side. Could it be that his weakness is his women? I can see that you are very concerned about Yu Qianqiu. It's not a normal kind of concern. Man Hu said. Yan Zhuixing turned his head and looked at him. There was a heart-palpitating indifference in his eyes. Then he returned to calmness and said with a smile, he and I are old enemies. Thanks to him, my family can't reunite until now. What's more, second senior brother's enmity is also here. After seeing the change in his eyes, Man Hu's heart trembled slightly. When Yan Zhuixing first cultivated the demonic book, he found it difficult to control his emotions and often had this kind of eyes. Later on, as he cultivated for a long time, he was able to control it. However, whenever this expression appeared in his eyes, it meant that he was very unhappy. Man Hu didn't say anything else. He felt that Yan Zhuixing's desire for Yu Qianqiu wasn't as simple as revenge. Ever since Yan Zhuixing frequently inquired about Yu Qianqiu's news, the world's #1 expert below the soul formation stage has appeared. Let's go and see what else he wants to do. Yan Zhuixing stood up and left the table. Man Hu turned his head around and saw Yu Qianqiu looking around for a while before leaving Wen Clan's shop with another person. Mo Xiaojun followed behind Yu Qianqiu. He didn't know what he was going to do, but since Niu Yi told them to listen to him, they didn't dare to have any objections. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu's background wasn't simple either, so it wasn't too bad for them. What they saw in the Wen family's shop shocked the four of them. Obviously, their relationship with Wen Lanfeng and the others wasn't ordinary. Yu Qianqiu didn't stop all the way. He wasn't interested in the dazzling array of goods on the street at all. After accompanying Furong and Zi for half a day, he spent more than 1 billion yuan. Now he didn't even want to look at the shops on the street. One look would bring back painful memories. It was really painful, so he might as well not see it and not be annoyed. In fact, money was a small matter. It wasn't like it was robbed by others. What else could he say when his woman spent it? Although Zi wasn't his woman, they were all on the same side. After spending it, he could earn it back. If he couldn't earn it back, it was because he was useless. He still had this bit of magnanimity. However, what really annoyed him was Yan Yu. Yan Yu's miserable appearance when she left had been lingering in his mind. They walked to a fork in the street and turned straight out. The two of them came to the periphery of Cornucopia. There were no shops in the area, only grids made of lime powder. Each grid was about 2 square meters and there was a stall in each of them. Looking around, it seemed to be even more lively than the central area of Cornucopia. There were people lingering in various stalls everywhere. There were probably many people who wanted to find treasures here. Sir, are you also here to find treasures? Mo Xiaojun followed behind him and asked. I don't have that kind of taste. Yu Qianzhou looked around and said, I'm here to set up a stall. I have to earn back the money I spent today. Mo Xiaojun was stunned. The #1 expert below the demigod stage actually wanted to set up a stall. Wasn't that too degrading? He looked behind him and kindly reminded, Sir, there are many eyes behind you. They seem to be following you. Pretend I didn't see them. Let them follow me. What can they do to me? I still have to rely on them to advertise later. I guarantee my business will be booming. Yu Qianzhou stopped and looked into the distance. He rubbed his chin and said, Why are there no more stalls? Mo Xiaojun heard him and looked around. Coincidentally, he saw an empty space not far to the left. He pointed and said, Sir, there's one there. I'll go rent it for you. Yu Qianzhou glanced at it and waved his hand. It's too expensive here. The rent for a day is 10 high-grade spirit stones. Come, let's go to the edge. The rent there is only 1 high-grade spirit stone a day. There were 2 people who were pretending to follow them. They almost fainted when they heard that. They couldn't help but complain to Yu Qianzhou. They thought, we followed you around the treasure bowl today. You're so extravagant. The spirit stones you throw out can crush a cultivator to death. Now even 10 high-grade spirit stones are expensive? Who are you trying to fool? Did he notice us? It's okay. I still have some spirit stones. I'll rent the stall for you. Mo Xiaojun said kindly. Niu Yid gave the 4 of them a lot of money. No need. I have money. But I can't spend it recklessly. Yu Qianzhou sighed. The women in my family are already extravagant. If I spend more, I'll be a prodigal. I have no choice. I can only save it and let her squander it. I can't let her suffer even if I have to suffer. Besides, our goods are good. We don't have to worry about not being able to sell them. It doesn't matter if the stall is a little bad. Mo Xiaojun quickly shut up. This master was a man with his own ideas. He didn't need him to make decisions for him. The 2 of them walked to the edge of the treasure bowl and strolled around. In the end, they found that the expensive areas were still empty. But the stalls here were all occupied. It seemed that the majority of the poor were still poor. There were many people who wanted to save money. Actually, Yu Qianzhou's position was quite conspicuous. Whether it was a buyer or a seller, they were all quietly sizing him up. After all, he was the famous Yu Qianzhou. Someone didn't understand and quietly asked the person next to him who he was. The person next to him turned around and made a butcher's gesture at him. He said softly, Butcher. The latter opened his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else. He used his eyes to observe carefully. Yu Qianzhou pinched his chin and looked around. Was he looking for someone to rent with? Or was he looking for someone he didn't like to chase away? Senior, do you want to buy something? Someone suddenly spoke behind him. Although he didn't know if he was called, he still looked back and saw a familiar person nodding and bowing to him. Yu Qianzhou turned around and squinted his eyes to stare at him. This person. He was familiar, but he wasn't familiar either. He was the itinerant cultivator called Yi Qing that he met outside the plum garden of Ghost Manor. They had met a long time ago when they were on supporting Immortal's island. Last time he intentionally avoided him because he was Niu Yid. This time he took the initiative to greet him because he was Yu Qianzhou now. Interesting. Yu Qianzhou nodded and smiled at him. I remember seeing you before. He didn't expose him and started to size up the things he was selling. Yi Qing bit his lips excitedly. His eyes actually turned slightly red. Senior, you actually still remembers me. We only met once on supporting Immortal's island. To Yu Qianzhou there was nothing worth looking at in the stall. On a piece of gray cloth, there were more than 10 stones of different colors. Some were black and some were mixed with shiny things. After looking at it for a while, he still couldn't understand what it was. He guessed that it was some kind of ore. The highest price was only 9 superior grade spirit stones. He didn't know where this person dug it out and used it to cheat money. Yu Qianzhou bared his teeth and said, "What's your name?" "Senior Yu, my name is Yi Qing," Yi Qing said respectfully. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and said, "Can I discuss something with you?" Yi Qing was stunned and immediately asked, "Please speak." "How about I rent this stall with you?" Yu Qianzhou asked. Yi Qing immediately let out an "ah," and thought that he had heard wrongly. After he reacted, he nodded and said, "Senior can say whatever you want." "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Yu Qianzhou stretched his arm and first collected all the small wooden signs with the price tags on the stall. Then he stacked the pile of broken stones to one side. After emptying half of the space, he took out pots of fresh flowers from his storage bag. There were a total of 10 pots. The flowers were orchids. The strange thing was that the thin and long leaves were tender and beautiful blood red. There was also a faint smell of blood. There were 7 pure white flowers on top of them. The blood-red stamens clustered around the white petals. The whole thing gave off a pale feeling of blood. These 10 pots of flowers gave off an evil feeling. Then he took out a wooden board and wrote a bunch of words on the board with a fiery red glow on his finger. The people at the side could smell the burning wood. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the ground with a kacha sound. He looked at Yiqing and then at the pile of broken stones. Then he took out another wooden board and wrote a bunch of words on it. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the pile of broken stones as well. After that, Yu Qianzhou clapped his hands and pulled out 2 chairs from his storage bag. He placed them behind the stall and sat down with his legs crossed. He raised his hand and gestured for Yiqing to sit as well. Yiqing did not dare to disobey. He nervously wiped his butt and sat down. The latter was nervous and excited. He did not expect to be on equal footing with Senior Yu. Mo Xiaojun looked at the words on the 2 boards and was speechless. He took a few steps and stood behind the 2 chairs. Yiqing wanted to give up his seat but was stopped by Mo Xiaojun. He pointed at Yu Qianzhou and gestured for him to listen to him. Yu Qianzhou was setting up a stall on the street. There was an uproar. The idle crowd walked over quickly to see what he was selling. Chapter 634. In the blink of an eye, the stall was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone tiptoed to squeeze in. The other stalls on the side suffered and they were trampled by pairs of feet. However, they were humble, so they didn't dare to say anything. They couldn't continue, so they had to temporarily close their stalls and watch the bustle. When someone saw the 10 pots of orchids, his eyes immediately lit up. He obviously recognized them. However, not many people recognized it, so they all looked at the wooden sign, only to see that it was written, 7-star blood orchid sold in large quantities, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant, honest to the old and young, no bargaining. It's 7-star blood orchid. Sold in large quantities? So many. Someone from Treasure Tower seems to be buying one for 20 million. Everyone looked at the sign inserted next to the stone, which read, rare or priceless, the highest bidder gets it. There were people who had seen these stones in Yi City's stalls before. At that time, the highest price was only 9 top-grade spirit stones. How did it become priceless in the blink of an eye? Those who recognized these ores sighed in their hearts, but they couldn't point it out in front of Yu Qianzhou. However, there were also many people who were tempted by these stones. They could be sold together with the 7-star blood orchid, and they were priceless, so they must be good things. Don't push forward anymore. If you step on the things in the stall, don't blame me for being rude. Yu Qianzhou sat with his legs crossed and warned the crowd coldly. The people in front immediately squeezed back. What a joke, this butcher was a master who killed without batting an eye. He even dared to offend the forces of various countries. What crazy things did he not dare to do? Yi City looked at Yu Qianzhou and then looked at the onlookers. He was very excited. Senior Yu was Senior Yu. He was so majestic wherever he went. Unfortunately, Fuxian Island couldn't keep such a talent. There were many people watching, but no one bought it at present. Yu Qianzhou silently looked at those who quietly squeezed out of the crowd and left quickly. He was not worried that the things couldn't be sold. The price was so high that ordinary people couldn't afford it. Even if he couldn't sell them, it didn't matter. He didn't think that he could make much money by selling so many blood orchids. What he had now was money. This time he had obtained a total of 46 billion high-grade spirit stones from Yin Baikong, which was enough to feed the people in Utopia. Moreover, he had a pile of top-grade and divine-grade spirit stones as his trump card, so he did not have to worry about not having enough money to spend. Moreover, he could more or less earn enough pocket money to cover his expenses. He just wanted to see who was buying a lot of 7-star blood orchids. He thought that he knew the function of 7-star blood orchids better than the average person. No matter what, there was no need to buy a lot of 7-star blood orchids. There was something strange about it. In terms of who had a large number of 7-star blood orchids, there was probably no one who had more than him. The spiritual herb garden in Utopia was like growing cabbages. Therefore, he deliberately offered such a high price to test the market. If there was still someone willing to spend a lot of money to buy it, then the buyer's motive was questionable. Who was it? The news that Yu Qianqiu was sharing a house and setting up a stall soon spread in cornucopia. When Lan Feng dismissed the person who reported the news and turned to ask the other two, setting up a stall? What does Yu Qianqiu want to do? Nongzhu also shook her head in confusion and said, this kid talks all day long and does all kinds of unimaginable things. Who knows what he wants to do? Strange, where did he get so many 7-star blood orchids to sell? Selling a lot of 7-star blood orchids? Lu Yanqing paused and said softly, Spirit Feng Valley also raised one of the 7-star blood orchids. I have been studying it and found that this kind of spiritual herb is very magical. When it is refined with different spiritual herbs, it can produce different miraculous effects. It seems that there is infinite potential to be unearthed. Unfortunately, the cultivation period is too long and I dare not use it freely. I only pluck a leaf every once in a while to study it, mainly because I am afraid of hurting it. As he spoke, he looked at Nongzhu and said, this thing is very hard to come by. I also want to buy a few from Yu Qianqiu, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. To me it is a little too high. Nongzhu, can you help me talk to Yu Qianqiu and ask him to sell me some at a lower price? You also know that my Spirit Feng Valley is not like other places. We have almost no income and can't get so much money. Just think of it as I owe him a favor or I can exchange some rare elixirs with him. When Lan Feng and Nongzhu looked at each other, everyone knew that alchemy was the strength of Spirit Feng Valley, but it was hardly involved in trading. Moreover, Spirit Feng Valley's medical skills were the best in the world, but they never profited from it. They had always treated people in the world for free, including those secular mortals. Therefore, compared to other forces, Spirit Feng Valley was really poor. The disciples in the sect almost didn't use spirit stones for cultivation, but took elixirs. But it was also because of this that they won the respect of the world. Cultivators who owed them a favor if they had the opportunity to get good spirit herbs, would give them to her free of charge. Even those secular mortals knew that Spirit Feng Valley liked all kinds of herbs. So if they occasionally came across some unknown herbs in the deep mountains and wilderness, they would send them to Spirit Feng Valley without any complaints, regardless of whether they were useful or not. In this way, Spirit Feng Valley and everyone formed a relationship of mutual dependence. In addition, Spirit Feng Valley never participated in the battle of the cultivation world, so it was not a threat to everyone. Everyone was happy to live in harmony with it. After all, they might one day need to ask Spirit Feng Valley for help. Fighting and killing, it was inevitable to suffer some incurable injuries. Even the well-known old fox Yin Baikong would send a large number of spirit herbs at a fixed time every year for free. Using rare elixirs to exchange with him? Nongzhu murmured with a strange expression. She thought to herself, is there a lack of rare elixirs in that guy's hands? He can even refine those legendary heaven-defying elixirs by himself. I really don't know if the rare elixirs in your hands will catch his eye. What? Is there a problem? Lu Yanqing asked. Nongzhu shook her head and said with a wry smile, I trust you too, so I won't hide it from you. Lu Yanqing, if you exchange elixirs with him, I'm afraid he won't be interested in your elixirs. To be honest, that kid himself is a genius in alchemy. Some of the elixirs he refined can be called heaven-defying. His attainments in this aspect may not be lower than yours. What's more, this guy has a lot of unorthodox ways. He can always get some rare spirit herbs. You should be able to see it from the large number of 7-star blood orchids he set up today. He is also a master in alchemy. When Lan Feng was a little surprised. Seeing Nongzhu nodding, he could not help but say, I really didn't see it. At such a young age, his cultivation is already outstanding among his peers, and he is full of wisdom and talent. I didn't expect him to be proficient in alchemy. Given time, it will be amazing. As an experienced person, he knew that it was impossible for a person to be distracted to do too many things. There were specializations. If one was good at one thing, the others must be weaker. It was rare to see someone like him who was so good at everything. When Lan Feng had to admire Bai Chongqun's vision for accepting disciples again, Lu Yanqing was stunned. Thinking of Niu Yid's ability to refine limit-breaking pill and 7 treasures pill, she knew that what Nongzhu said was true. But as for what Nongzhu said that Yu Qianqiu had a lot of unorthodox ways, she somewhat did not believe it. It was estimated that Yu Qianqiu could get all kinds of rare spirit herbs because of Bai Chongqun. It should be known that the vast demon domain was like a virgin land that had not been unveiled. How could there be a lack of all kinds of spirit herbs in it? It could be seen from the fact that Yu Qianqiu could get so many 7-star blood orchids. Yanqing, why don't I buy 10 for you? When Lan Feng said with some apprehension. He knew that the result of saying this would be rejected. It had always been like this for many years. But it involved such a large number of spirit stones. Who would have the nerve to ask Yu Qianqiu to give it for free? Robbing? That was even worse. Not to mention that Lu Yanqing would not accept it. Just the serious consequences of robbing Bai Chongqun's disciple was not something that anyone could bear. Sure enough, Lu Yanqing shook her head and said, I appreciate your kindness. I'll talk to him myself. If he doesn't want to, then forget it. I won't force him. Well, let me go find that kid. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, it's just a few 7-star blood orchids. It's not as complicated as you think. If he has more, let him give some for free. Lu Yanqing, you owe him a favor. Don't mention exchanging elixirs for them. In fact, Nongzhu really didn't want to open his mouth. Some time ago he got a sword from the Immortal world from Yu Qianqiu. If he said it was a betrothal gift, he could comfort himself. Later, Z spent so much money from him. He could also comfort himself by saying that it was right. His daughter was ready to be given to him. It was nothing to spend some money from him. But then he asked him for a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. Now he had to ask Yu Qianqiu for a few 7-star blood orchids. No matter how thick-skinned Nongzhu was, he felt a little embarrassed. He asked for things from the younger generation and they were all valuable things. It was a little shameful. Taking advantage of others was not like this. He was not at the point where he could be slaughtered, right? What's more, when Yu Qianqiu left before, he said that he was going to earn back the money his daughter spent. So he set up a stall to sell blood orchids. The disciple of Bai Chongqun, the world's #1 master, was forced to set up a stall to sell things. As a result, when the things were put out, he took a fancy to them and asked them for free. How could he ask for it? Originally, he was very unhappy that Yu Qianqiu and the woman in the Sleeping Spring building were together. He was also full of anger and wanted to find an opportunity to teach this kid a lesson. But he was short of a hand. If he opened his mouth, the guy who only cared about money would lose hundreds of millions in vain. How could he mention the woman in the Sleeping Spring building? It should be known that the kid was not a good person to talk to. At that time he could shut him up with one sentence. But seeing the two friends in a dilemma, he couldn't bear it, so he had to agree to this matter. But the consequences of agreeing to this matter, he was afraid that some things would have to be turned a blind eye to Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 635. It was impossible for the World Commerce Association to not know about such an uproar. On the God of Wealth Peak, Sikongju reported this matter to his master, who knew that after Yin Baikong heard this, he didn't seem to find it strange at all and only nodded to indicate that he understood. Instead, he was more interested in the process of Hu Yuntian's disturbance at Sleeping Spring Loft, especially when he heard that there was a beauty even more beautiful than Yen Yu. His eyes flickered and he asked a few more questions. Sikongju went down the mountain with doubts in his heart. Could it be that his master already knew about the 7-star blood orchid? 200 million for one stalk, isn't he afraid of breaking his own teeth? This brat really dares to quote a price, but this is his style. Yin Baikong stared at the foot of the God of Wealth Peak and recalled the scene of Yu Qianqiu trying to hide and sell the 7 treasure pills. Comparing the past and the past, he realized that this fellow was indeed extraordinarily greedy. Yin Baikong gazed into the distance from the foot of the mountain and muttered to himself, to be able to take out so many 7-star blood orchids at once. It seems that this is the benefit that Nyoyid gave him. The immortal world is indeed the immortal world. The rare spirit herbs of the mortal world are probably nothing much over there. Otherwise, how could they sell so much? After some consideration, he summoned Jing Yuankong and gave him 3,007 treasure pills for him to arrange the sale. As for the rest, Yin Baikong prepared to leave it for the World Commerce Association's own use. After the next batch of goods arrived, he would consider the sale according to the situation. After repeating this a few times, he would have enough financial resources and spirit pills stored up. Once Bai Chongqun entered the East Holy Land without the most terrifying hindrance, the rise of the World Commerce Association would be unstoppable. After the news of Yu Qianqiu setting up a stall spread, the border area of Cornucopia instantly became bustling with people. Yan Zhuixing and Man who stood outside the crowd. Because they were worried that someone would secretly attack them, they didn't dare to squeeze in to take a look. On this point, Yan Zhuixing was more or less not as bold as Yu Qianqiu. That fellow could still sit in a pile of enemies with his legs crossed and shout, Who was he afraid of? Yan Zhuixing and Man whose expressions turned serious when they heard that Yu Qianqiu had set up a stall to sell 7-star blood orchids. They felt that it was too much of a coincidence. Previously they were still discussing with Bing Qingzi where they could get a large number of blood orchids. Now Yu Qianqiu began to sell them in large quantities. It couldn't be more coincidental. However, the price was really ridiculously high, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant. Man who looked at the people coming and going and said with some worry, "If we wait like this, will someone buy it? It might be possible if the price was low, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. Unless there is an urgent need, who would spend such a huge amount of money? Wasn't he selling them in bulk? Even if someone wants to buy it, it's impossible for them to buy it all," Yan Zhuixing denied. "That's true." Man who nodded his head then slightly sighed and said, "Although the price is outrageous, but in order for you to master the devil arts as soon as possible and have the ability to protect yourself, I'm afraid that Master will save the money to purchase the restriction-breaking Dan and 7 treasure Dan. Even if it is more expensive, he will still buy some." Yan Zhuixing was silent and thought, if my demonic technique can reach the great accomplishment stage early, this little money is nothing. But he wouldn't directly say this to Man Hu. But this is also good. At least Master doesn't have to violate the oath to go to the Wu clan in the Chinese cultivation world to find the blood orchids, Man Hu said with emotion. Yan Zhuixing heard this and suddenly narrowed his eyes. In his mind he recalled the scenes of meeting Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue several times in the Wu clan. He said in a deep voice, "I understand, so it is him." "What?" Man Hu asked with some doubts. Yan Zhuixing slowly explained, "I know who the Wu clan's 7-star blood orchids came from. I should have thought of it earlier, otherwise it wouldn't be so coincidental. Back when Yu Qianqiu was in the Wu clan happened to be auctioning the 7-star blood orchids. Later I found it strange. Why did the Wu clan auction such rare spiritual herbs one after another? I haven't even heard of it in other places. Today this guy just happened to have a bunch of 7-star blood orchids for sale. Connecting the two matters together, it is very clear." In fact, he had only guessed half of it. When the Wu clan first auctioned the 7-star blood orchids, Yu Qianqiu was just a buyer. However, after he brought the blood orchid back to Utopia, it bred a lot, which was why it was auctioned later on. So that's how it is. Man Hu nodded and said, "In that case, this guy must know where there is a large number of blood orchids. It would be good if we can get some information from him. After all, the more blood orchids you have, the better. Spending money to buy them isn't a solution. This guy's price is too high, and if we buy too much, our ice palace won't be able to afford it. Find a chance to meet him alone. I have a way to get it out of him," Yan Zhuixing said confidently. Man Hu's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to say something, he heard someone laugh and say, "So Brother Man and Brother Yan are here too." The two of them turned around and saw it was none other than Hu Yuntian. Looking at his happy face, it seemed that the embarrassing incident at the sleeping spring loft didn't affect him anymore. Hu Yuntian had 4 followers behind him. After the 3 of them greeted each other, Hu Yuntian looked at the crowded place and said with a smile, "Are the 2 of you here to watch the show? Why don't you go in and take a look? Squeezing with them is beneath my dignity." Man Hu looked at the crowd in disdain and found a good excuse. That's easy." Hu Yuntian waved at the 4 people behind him, and they immediately opened up a path in front of them. They kept shouting, "Make way, make way." When the people who were being chased saw that they were from the Cloud Palace, they all made way. "Please." Hu Yuntian waved at the 2 of them. The 2 of them looked at each other and didn't stand on ceremony. They followed him in. Yu Qianqiu's stall was set up for half a day. There were many people looking at it, but no one was interested in it. The 7-star blood orchid wasn't sold, but Yi Cheng's pile of broken stones were sold at a high price. They were sold for more than 50,000 high-grade spirit stones. Yi Cheng naturally knew that it was because of Yu Qianqiu, so he wanted to give him the spirit stones. But how could Yu Qianqiu take advantage of this, so he firmly refused. After being stared at for so long, Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. Just as he was comforting himself to be patient, he suddenly heard someone shouting to open up a path. Turning his head, he saw a few people walking over in an imposing manner. He didn't know Hu Yuntian, so he was stunned when he saw Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing. When Man Hu saw him, he couldn't help but think of his second brother's death. His expression didn't look good even if he wanted to. Instead, Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands and smiled. Brother Yu, I didn't expect to see you here again. Hu Yuntian looked at both sides and asked despite knowing the answer, so the two of you know each other. Who didn't know that Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing were old enemies in China's cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu stood up and also cupped his hands and smiled. I was wondering why my eyelids kept twitching today. So it's because an old friend is here. Brother Yan, I really missed you after we parted in China. His words didn't match and no one knew if he was flattering or mocking. When he stood up, Yiqing couldn't sit still and quickly stood up as well. Yan Zhuixing didn't mind. He had already experienced this guy's eloquence and he had never taken advantage of him. Sparring with him was just looking for excitement. This is East Country's Cloud Palace's Hu Yuntian, third young master Hu. Yan Zhuixing introduced with deep meaning. He emphasized the name Hu Yuntian very clearly. He came to a conclusion today and he wanted to verify if women were Yu Qianqiu's weakness. Wasn't there a rumor in China's cultivation world that the Temptress of 100 Charms was Yu Qianqiu's mistress? When Yu Qianqiu heard that this person was Hu Yuntian, his expression changed slightly. He glanced over coldly. You're that Hu Yuntian who snatched people from Sleeping Spring Loft? Yan Zhuixing knew it was as he expected and he smiled without saying a word. Hu Yuntian was stunned and he felt that something was wrong. Judging from Yan Zhuixing's tone, he didn't seem to like him, and he didn't know when he had offended Yan Zhuixing. He paused for a moment and smiled. It was a moment of recklessness and I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Yu. On the other hand, Brother Yu's reputation as the #1 expert below spirit severing stage is something that I've long heard of. As he spoke, he glanced at Yan Zhuixing and he realized that he had been tricked. Yu Qianqiu also glanced at Yan Zhuixing and then looked around. He resisted the urge to make a move on the spot. He sat down on a chair casually and said with an expressionless face, I say I'm currently doing business and we'll talk again when I'm free. If you're not buying anything, please get out of the way. Don't hinder my business. Hu Yuntian's expression changed. He was used to being unreasonable and this Yu Qianqiu made him lose face again and again in public. He almost couldn't hold it in anymore, but he knew that when Lan Feng was currently in the cornucopia, and he had to endure it no matter what. After all, his father wasn't as powerful as when Lan Feng. Who knew that his guards would overdo their duty, and they didn't understand their boss's spirit. One of the guards, who was probably the leader, shouted, How dare you? Hu Yuntian wanted to stop his men from being rude, but he was too slow. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and he didn't say anything else. He flicked his sleeve and a group of green rays shot out. The guard was shocked. He didn't expect the other party to attack without saying a word. He was a disciple of the Yun Palace. Being caught in the crowd, it was difficult to dodge, and at such a close distance, the only place to dodge was the sky, so he immediately dodged up. Who knew that the other party had already expected it? He had just jumped up half a person's height when a figure fell from the sky, holding a big black saber and slashed at his head. In a flash, a flying sword shot out to meet the enemy. Dang! The flying sword broke into two. The distance was too close and he couldn't dodge in front, back, left, or right. The flying sword from below came again. The guard was frightened and he had no choice but to use his protective aura chi to protect his body. However, he seemed to have forgotten what the big black saber in Yu Qianqiu's hand was. It was a fierce thing that had once caused a reign of terror. A scream sounded and everyone watched in horror as the big black saber cut through the protective aura chi like a watermelon, and cut the guard in half. The process was complicated but it happened in the blink of an eye. No one thought that Yu Qianqiu would dare to make a move in the cornucopia without any warning. Hu Yuntian, Yan Zhuixing and Man who were also stunned, they didn't expect this guy to be so crazy. It wasn't until Yu Qianqiu killed the guard that the surrounding people reacted, and with a hua sound, they were afraid of being involved, so they all dodged. In such a crowded situation the scene could be imagined. It was called a person colliding with another.